The regular City Council meeting for 1/24/2023. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez.
Here.
Councilmember Frieden.
Here.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez.
Present.
Councilmember Jordan. And Mayor Rouse.
Here. All right, very good. And we have some ceremonial items. Madam Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I'm very pleased to recognize our city employees who are celebrating work anniversaries at this point in time. And I'd like to start with those employees who've had 5 years of service, starting with Matt Nero, who is an associate planner in the Community Development Department. Ellen Kukinda, who is a senior planner in the Senior Planner 1 in the Community Development Department. Jason Ramirez, street maintenance crew leader in Public Works Department. Julio Gamino, harbor operations assistant at the Waterfront Department. With 10 years of service, Richard Stokes, maintenance worker 2 in the Public Works Department at Downtown Parking. Chris Hevesy, water treatment plant operator 3 in the Public Works wastewater treatment plant operator 3, also incredibly important at the Public Works Department. And with 15 years, Benjamin Arends, police sergeant in the police department. Thomas Van Eyck, police officer in the police department. Robbie Blackstone, senior airport operations specialist at the airport department. And with 25 years of experience, Susan Segura, police records supervisor at the police department. Keld Hove, police officer at the police department. Jeffrey James, electronics technician 2 at the Public Works Department, and I believe Mr. James is here to receive his proclamation in person. And finally, with 30 years, Chris Aringer, fire captain at the fire department, and Chief Chris Males with the fire department. I would also like to acknowledge that both council members Sneddon and Friedman have 5 years of service in their roles as council members.
All right, very good. All right, we'll acknowledge Jeffrey James. Congratulations. Jeffrey James, an electronic technician 2, 25 years of service. Jeffrey James began his career with the City of Santa Barbara in January 1998 as an electronics technician in the Downtown Parking Division of Public Works. In 2007, after 9 years of dedicated service, he was promoted to Electronics Technician 2. Jeff has unparalleled expertise in parking equipment and operations. Often he is more knowledgeable than the manufacturer's own technicians. His mastery of revenue control systems keeps downtown parking in business. He is always learning, staying abreast of the latest advancements, and looking for opportunities to improve parking operations through technology. Jeff goes above and beyond to keep downtown parking's equipment in top shape, which keeps traffic flowing and customers happy. Jeff has overseen several major technology transitions during his tenure with downtown parking. He played a key role in selecting the city's SKIDATA revenue control system and transitioning all the lots from an older system to the new equipment. He has overseen the installation, upgrades, and maintenance of downtown parking's extensive CCTV and data storage system. Most recently, he guided the implementation of license plate recognition systems at 12 downtown lots, which has enabled the division to increase revenue collection while reducing staffing costs. Jeff enjoys spending time with his family, including his wife of 26 years, Catherine, his 2 adult children, Jared and Carly, and his dog, Maiko. Outside of work, Jeff is an avid adventure motorcycle rider and takes annual cross-country motorcycle trips with friends. On weekends, Jeff also enjoys playing tennis, racquetball, and most recently, pickleball. Jeff, on behalf of this city council, the residents of Santa Barbara, and your fellow employees, it is a great pleasure to honor you for your exemplary career and outstanding service to our community. Congratulations, Jeff. Let's bring it up to Chief. Christopher Males, Fire Chief, 30 years of service. Chris Males was born and raised in Santa Barbara. He attended Santa Barbara High School, became a local Eagle Scout, and received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science from UC Santa Barbara. Chris's passion and dedication to serving his community began with working for Mobile Life Support as a paramedic, as well as a dispatcher for the Sheriff's Department. Chris has also spent decades as an EMT instructor at Santa Barbara City College and has served as a mentor to many current and future public safety members. On January 1st, 1993, Chris began his career with the City of Santa Barbara as a firefighter. In 1997, he earned a promotion to fire engineer, and then to captain in 2004, battalion chief in 2015, and became the city's fire chief in 2021. Chris is not only an asset locally, but also very involved at the regional level, having participated with the operational area training chiefs and as a member of the Santa Barbara County Fire Chiefs Association. Chris remains dedicated to reflecting on his experience, using his skills and knowledge to advocate for and improve the service capabilities of our community and county, ensuring that our families, citizens, and guests receive the highest level of service and care. Chris's love and appreciation for his wife Sonia, daughter Jordan, and son Eric are no secret to his co-workers and friends. Chris never misses a moment to brag about his family and share about stories and photos. When Chris can find some free time, he enjoys golfing, hiking, fishing, and playtime with dog Millie. Chris, Chief Males, for 3 decades, you have served the community with honor, compassion, and dedication as a respected member of the Santa Barbara Fire Department. On behalf of the City Council, your fellow firefighters, staff of the City of Santa Barbara, and local residents, it is my pleasure to honor you for your exemplary 30-year career and your outstanding service to our community. Chief, congratulations.
Wow. Thanks, everybody. This is humbling. I'll keep my comments brief, as everybody in the community has seen a little too much of me in the last couple of weeks. So I stand before you as a relatively healthy and certainly happy 30-year employee. Never did I think back in January of 1993 that I'd be here to make acceptance of a 30-year appreciation. Back then, I was a 26-year-old who'd spent his whole life in Santa Barbara dreaming of the opportunity to work for this city and this fire department. This was the only place I wanted to work. It's been a wonderful ride. As we all know, Santa Barbara is a special place, and its fire department exemplifies this. Behind me are a few of the 106 employees that each and every day come to work knowing that they've been entrusted to protect the community to the best of their ability. And protect it we do. Nearly 12,000 times a year, our firefighters respond to the myriad of complex emergencies that we face. You've heard me state that I believe this is one of the most complex cities of our size in regards to needed fire protection. From the mountains to the waterfront, from the railroad to the airport, our firefighters acknowledge and excel at the diverse requirements to be competent with any emergency put before them. A couple of weeks ago, you saw those diverse requirements. People trapped in vehicles, gas leaks, fires, just to name a few that day. The job's becoming more complex and more dangerous. During my tenure, our call volume has increased by 100%. Fires are more dangerous, medical calls more complex. There's more airplanes landing at the airport every year. City government exists with a primary function to provide for public safety. I know we're entering challenging budgetary times, but I'm confident we're going to come out stronger on the other side. In the next few months, you'll continue to hear about our strategic plan, our standards of cover study. You've heard and you'll continue to hear about the changes coming to the emergency medical services system in our community. And just know that your fire department stands to make that all work well and to work better. It's truly, truly has been an amazing, amazing career. I've got a little bit of gas left in the tank or a little electricity left in the batteries, however you want to say it. But I do want to make just a couple of things. Lastly, I'd like to thank my family, including my mother, who's here. She is a nearly 70-year resident of the city of Santa Barbara. Also here is my wife, Sonia, and our daughter, who I would love to say came all the way from New York, but she's been here for a few weeks with us. So the support they've shown me during this amazing career is most appreciated and cherished. Again, thank you to the city of Santa Barbara for the wonderful career. My family thanks you, and most importantly, the people standing with me, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief Mayles. Obviously, the recent performance of all our public safety personnel showed exactly what they're made of. Fabulous. Okay, Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
Mayor Rouse, we need to pull item 13 for renoticing for council's information and any public who may be watching. The date will not change, but we do need to renotice set the date for that item.
All right, thank you. So pull. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to public comment, and we have been dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century with this new electronic set of devices. So hopefully we'll get this thing to work, but it should be pretty clear. You'll have a counter on the dais as usual. You'll get 3 minutes to speak on any subjects as within the purview of this body, and it'll let you know when time's up before I do even. So with that, we will go to public comment, and let's see if we can make this work. Mark Marshall Wolford, be the first speaker. You have 3 minutes at the dais. And once again, please make all your comments that are something within this body's purview of control.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank each and every one of you for everything you do for the city, and believe me, it's well noted. Mr. Mike, where you at? Mr. Jordan, there was some trees down in Aurora Burrow Creek, and thank God they got taken before some flooding got done. And we've had what happened down on Haley and whatnot, but everything's been crazy. And over the years, I've been through a lot myself. I lost a brother recently, and you never know what's going to happen. You never know. I thank God for every day I even wake up. But I've got some medical issues, and I hope they get addressed sooner than later. Everybody, I have the utmost respect for each and every one of you. Thank you, and God bless you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker up will be Judy Frank.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and staff. My name is Judy Frank, and I live in Santa Barbara. I'm the president of the East Beach Townhomes, consisting of 80 units located across the beach on Cabrillo Boulevard. I also work closely with the board at El Escorial, which consists of 260 units and is adjacent to our property. Both boards are constantly dealing with the challenges of the homeless and trying to protect our residents from attempted break-ins to stealing bikes and other personal items. A couple of weeks ago, the News Press published a letter I wrote discussing my experience when walking down State Street. The letter reads as follows. I would like to share with the readers about a recent experience I had walking down State Street in the evening. A week or so prior to Thanksgiving, a gentleman friend and I had dinner at Arigato, located on the 1200 block of State Street. We finished our dinner around 8 p.m. and decided to take a walk down State Street to the Red Piano. It was early enough that some of the restaurants and bars were still open, so there was some activity and lights on. We left the Red Piano around 10 p.m. and started walking up State Street to the 1100 block, where our car was parked. The walk back up State Street was very different than the walk down. Red Piano is located on the 500 block of State Street. From the 500 block to the 700 block, there were still some bars open, so there was lighting and activity. Once we hit the 800 block and continuing up through the 1100 block, most of the businesses were closed and or the buildings were vacant. This caused little to no lighting for anyone walking on the sidewalk or the street. We also encountered many homeless individuals lying or sitting in almost every doorway in each of the buildings. In several instances, we were asked for money. Both of us felt very uncomfortable and not safe. We commented on how we felt vulnerable and would never want to take this walk again. I've lived in Santa Barbara since 1977. State Street used to be a lively, safe area with great shopping, restaurants, and a sense of community. The stroll down State Street was filled with clothing stores, jewelry stores, ice cream shops, and one could always do window shopping when walking in the evening. Now State Street has become a dirty, rundown, dark, vacant, and unsafe area taken over by the homeless. When will law-abiding, tax-paying residents get our beautiful city back again? Maybe if the Santa Barbara City Council members took this walk the way I did, they might have a different attitude about what needs to be done to keep us safe. This letter was then posted on Facebook with hundreds of comments from residents expressing their similar experiences about safety concerns, and most saying they would not come down to State Street anymore. This affects all the businesses downtown. I am here today to ask City Council to do your job, get offenders off the street, and protect the citizens of Santa Barbara. Thank you.
Perfect timing, very good. Next speaker is Tracy Wilfong.
Hello, City Council. Hello, Mayor. Thank you for letting me speak. I am an East Beach resident homeowner. I would like to bring to your attention that there are homeowners and residents at East Beach. I've watched the quality of life deteriorate there. First, we were not listened to about the parking situation there at the volleyball courts. We now have headlights in our faces at night, and I don't see how that parking is any safer than parallel, though you do have more people. You have tailgate parties, more people, more trash, more homeless. We have homeless camping in the zoo area by the Cabrillo bike course. Summer is around the corner, and last summer, though right now it looks clean, I'm happy. Los Niños, where you had a lot of homeless camping right next to the zoo, that seems to be cleaned up, but one question I have is, who is our city outreach people for the homeless? Is there a phone number we can call, we can work with to get these people where they need to be? And back to my trash comment, last summer, there was trash all over Cabrillo all summer long. I contacted Ms. Sneddon. I never heard back from you. I then contacted Mayor Rouse. Thank you very much for always getting back to me right on time. And we have more developments in the loop in that area. I want to ask that we please look at what's going on, get a handle on it. This is not, Santa Barbara is a very, very special place. It's not a place for a lot of growth really fast. I thought we were a slow growth city. I thought we cared about our environment. I'm not seeing that right now. I'm seeing a lot of push for development, and we don't have the infrastructure, and a lot of trash, which means we're not taking care of our environment. And thank you very much.
Okay, and then Ms. Wilfong, there are contacts at City Hall, so if you check with the clerk when you go out, they can let you know to whom to contact. Okay. All right, very good. Next speaker is Rebecca Brand.
Glasses. Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, City Council members and staff. My name is Rebecca Brand, and I live in Santa Barbara. I've come here to talk about the violent behavior of a homeless person that vandalized, broke a window, then robbed and attacked me on Christmas Eve, and my wish to urge you, our town's leaders, to take action to make our town safer from angry, violent homeless. After research that's widely available, I found that 60% of homeless commit violent crimes. Certainly, the homeless feel anger, frustration, helplessness. They may have mental illness and have difficulty finding housing, which all plays into a whopping 60% with violent behavior. I am a victim from that statistic. I posted on my social media the violent crime that happened to me by a transient woman. To date, I've had 1,139 comments and other social media engagements to that. By far, this is the most popular topic of all time on my local social media. 90% of the comments agree with my opinion. Our public downtown and shopping areas are overrun with the unhoused, many of who are aggressive. And according to this widely acclaimed study, 60% of these unhoused transients are violent. I imagine the city has a census, on how many unhoused currently live in our area. There must be a finite amount. What is that, a few hundred or less, that actually roam State Street and our tourist and shopping areas? This is a population I speak of. The violent, aggressive homeless is who I speak of, that vandalize and attack, physically, verbally, exposing themselves, aggressively handhandling, and so on. My public Facebook page has countless stories of these incidents that continue without consequence to the criminal. My assailant, Nellie, has been arrested many times, but was never convicted. By not pressing charges, the system contributes to the next crime these people commit, and those crimes escalate. Leads me to wonder if there's a policy with our city government that sweeps over our judges, law enforcement, and the district attorney's office to not press charges of crimes by the homeless, even if violent. I wonder about this. In my opinion, this has got to stop. The homeless need to be held accountable for all crimes that are aggressive in order for crimes to not escalate, like in my case. It is the duty of Santa Barbara city government to keep citizens safe. You must do your duty. I urge you to immediately communicate to judges, police department, the district attorney's office that our city's policy is to immediately arrest and charge anyone who commits violent and aggressive crimes on our streets. I urge the city government to make our city safe immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Bruce Giffen. I've known you for years, and I always stick an R in your name. I don't know what.
You know, if I had $1 every time that happened, I'd have a lot of them. So, I'm Bruce Giffen. I'm a longtime board member of Elings Park, which is located in the city. It's America's largest park that's operated by a nonprofit without any financial support from any government. So I'm here today to give you an update on how we're doing. I'm going to change topics a little bit from the previous speakers. So we started a $10 million capital campaign 4 years ago to improve the infrastructure of the park. That means the roads, the bathrooms, the fields, and the facilities. So I just want to give you a quick update. We've raised $6.7 million. We've accomplished many of those goals along the way. We really appreciate your support politically. I know we don't get any financial support, and that's our choice, but thank you for your political support. We need every bit we can get. And at this point in time, we're in the major process of renovating the Las Positas Tennis Center restrooms. These were built by the city 50 years ago. This is their 50th anniversary. And the city asked us to take them over in 2009, and we did. And part of the deal with the lease, which the city was gracious and gave us a $1 a year lease on. And they said, okay, that's fine, you just need to improve the facilities. Well, it turns out it's a $3.2 million project. We've raised 60% of that. The restrooms are phase one, they're halfway done. And I have to say the architectural integrity of those restrooms from 50 years ago is being renovated and coming back out, and they're going to be stunning. I have a feeling when the project's completed, we'll be here with Santa Barbara Beautiful for the best makeover of a public restroom in Santa Barbara. So we're excited about that. Phase two, we'll be making all the tennis courts accessible to all. A lot of new hardscape going in there, pavers and all that. And we've raised 60% of the funds for that to happen. And then phase three will be the landscaping and redoing the parking lot for Las Positas. So good progress is being made there, and we'll look forward to seeing you all out there as we complete it. How'd we do in the storm? Well, we had a few landslides on the 9 miles of trails. Las Positas was impacted by one of them, which was cleared. Our trails are being heavily used now that the front country is closed. And I will say on Saturday that we had over 90 volunteers come out to help under the guidance of Sage Trail Alliance rebuild those trails. So we're open and available for the public to use. On a day like today, the view's extraordinary from Ealing's Park South, 360-degree views. If you want to get inspired, come on up. So as always, we appreciate your support and your encouragement as we make this labor of love to transform continued transformation of Ealing's Park. So thank you all.
Thank you. E-Planet Thunder Striker.
Hello, Council. I'm E-Planet Thunderstriker. My comments are impromptu, but one of the things I discussed over at the County Board of Supervisors was related to what they were talking about. I can at least point out here that the parents of the baby boomer generation would talk about how they didn't lock their doors at night. So right here I have a police report for a document theft, and I don't have my 3-minute timer on, thank you. A police report for a document theft that occurred in the city clerk's office. Now, I made a submission on the 3rd, and that's not in question. There were multiple individuals there that saw that. I have a stamp, although incorrect, of the 30th. And one of the things that I wrote on that submission, I have been in a difficult situation with the music industry for a while and encountering difficulties during attempted resolution. So what happened here just really isn't really a surprise based on everything I'm dealing with, and I've tried to discuss some of these issues in front of the council already, and still it's not going anywhere. I've mentioned Baryshnikov and how Russia broke up after that, and these kind of things are very demoralizing to a country, and I'm not just a typical run-of-the-mill kind of person trying to make it in our society, because there's already a lot of artists involved, and I'm not even going to have time to go into how Trump is probably related. City Clerk's Office received submission January 3rd. Submission not handled appropriately previous to 18th. Submission states difficulty during attempted resolution related to multiple various subversive activity. So I'm still kind of barred, I guess, from the supervisor's building making submissions to the clerk. There was an issue with a receptionist there who I had previous contact with. I would actually, now that I'm thinking about it, be talking to you guys previous to last summer, except Holly in the council chambers didn't advise me that the papers that I wanted to give to a council person or the mayor, I could submit those to the clerk, and clearly she didn't take them, and I went over to across the street, gave some papers to the aide of Mr. Hart, and that receptionist that was there that day was hiding behind the door around Thanksgiving. And it's related to this corruption that I'm dealing with, because you don't know anything about me, and I can't even go into the artists that are involved because of delusional megalomania, normally for people in my circumstances. And as far as what she was going, America right now, we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. 2 out of 3 crimes aren't even reported. Of those, I don't know what percentage is done. The baby boomers had the motto, "If feels good, do it," and they've completely ruined this country. If their parents, Reconquista is real. I learned about it in the early 90s from Mexicans in Tucson. Mexico has the world's 10th largest pollution rate, so they have infrastructure. Their peso value has gone up a lot, but that's not talked about either. And for normal American citizens, it's just so. Within the next week, we're gonna get some resolution on this.
All righty. Jonathan Pu'u. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, you did. Thank you. City Council, Mayor, thank you for taking the time today to open up for public comment. My name is Jonathan Pu'u. I'm 34 years old, tribal native Hawaiian. This is my first time here at City Council meeting in Santa Barbara. My family roots here are very deep. My mom's family grew up here in town with her. She's the youngest of 8 in the city of Santa Barbara. My father's family grew up here, him being the oldest of 6 children. My brother and I were both born here in the city of Santa Barbara as well. My family's also been involved in business here in Santa Barbara since the 80s, early 80s, from surfboard manufacturing warehouse and retail storefront. So with that said, I've had family who's been homeless. My family's been homeless in the past. So, and I've also had a few friends who are homeless, and I currently have a family member here in town that's homeless. So I can understand some of the resources that a lot of these individuals do have accessible to them, because I've had to direct people to them. And with that, I kind of just want to lead with empathy in regards to these people and what they have to deal with before I go into what I'm going to talk about. So I'm here today to share my experience with being in business on State Street in the 1100 block on State Street since July 1st, 2021. I've had my life personally threatened no less than 5 times in our business. And it's like directly in our business. We run a family martial arts school. So one of those incidents regarded a man with a hatchet who came in during a kids martial arts class and threatened my life. So, we've had a dumpster fire behind our building that was lit on fire by a transient, which turned into an incident with Santa Barbara Fire Department, and some of them were here today. Our business co-owner and myself have had to clean up human fecal matter more than we can count, and have had to save a handful of drug overdoses around our business. We have people who show up in the afternoon for our classes, and people are non-responsive. We even had a transient who decided to expose themselves to our staff and urinate in front of our business door, then proceed to camp on the sidewalk in front of the storefront for an entire week. This doesn't include the multiple thefts from CVS next door that have affected our business as well. During all the above, we've been told that Santa Barbara police can't do anything. We've been instructed by dispatch to not defend ourselves in situations such as where our lives are being threatened, including the scenarios with the hatchet. We've also been asked to make physical contacts with transients who have called in with suspected drug overdoses, as they have not been breathing with burnt foil and a lighter next to them. This is very dangerous to the potential fentanyl exposure from such cases. A single dusting of fentanyl accidentally inhaled from one of those overdose cases can cause an accidental exposure of a deadly substance by an innocent bystander. We've also documented people openly dealing drugs on State Street to the Santa Barbara Police Department, and individuals supplying these illicit substances on camera with no action taken upon these people. And while the city is doing what they can to address homeless and actually want to help, the problem lies with the people who choose to not get help. I just ask that you guys can do something for this. I do have some solutions. I know I'm out of time. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, very good. Are there any public speakers online?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 2 public speakers online. We have Aaron Ashland and then Sharon Rich. Aaron Ashland, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you all for your time. Mr. Mayor, last week you asked about where other cities might be trying promenades in the heart of their downtown. I was thinking about this coastal going on in Santa Barbara. They sure have figured out how to make their promenade vibrant in the heart of their city. It's on their, well, I guess it's called Main Street, in fact. I believe you may have heard of it. It's called Ventura. So maybe if you don't have to look very far, it's right down the coast from us. I also wanted to answer Councilwoman Gutierrez's question. The reason that no restaurant owners were able to attend or call last week is because you switched the schedule or the meeting last minute and moved it within the same week. See, restaurants put together a schedule for the entire week. So if I was off Tuesday to speak at the city council meeting and you move it to Thursday, I was probably scheduled to work on Thursday. So again, I was able to email and do some other things around my schedule, but I wasn't able to change all my employee schedules and allow me to attend the meeting. So that's why you didn't actually get a good representation of all the restaurants. I was wondering, I just wanted to say, after watching the SSAC a couple weeks ago, I was generally impressed with the MIG consultants and their process. Please don't forget, at the end of this, we all got to be a part of this process. So make sure when it's all completed that we support the outcome. I might not like it, you might not like it, Mr. Mayor, but let's support whatever it is, because they are the experts. We paid them to do their job. Let's not follow the lead when the cosmonauts, when we didn't do what they said, which was close 1 to 4 blocks of State Street. And lo and behold, a couple of years later, we were forced to because of COVID, and they were right the entire time. See, these companies know a lot more about city planning than we do, so we should default to them once they have their final design. I was wondering if you'll be removing the white plastic water barriers to begin our promenade. I mean, you guys just found $14 million, but small businesses who have struggled over the last couple of years, we've been asked to change out things that are white, paint things. I imagine that Night Lizard on the 600 block probably didn't find 1 penny last year, and you guys found $14 million. but he had to replace all of his white furniture. But I have 10 white plastic water barriers at the beginning of the promenade. So is it a white plastic item on the patio, or is it any white plastic item? Because they all fall in HLC. So maybe you guys could replace those barriers since you've asked us to replace any white stuff that we have. Using the same logic as you've had for the outdoor business facilities, will you be charging the businesses like Holdren's and Sandmark to clean all the sidewalks on the promenade? There are about 10 ODLA patios. So if you split up that 440 grand, they should pay about 44 grand a year. So yeah, you guys can figure that out. So as long as they pay for the sidewalks, it's totally fine for us to pay for the street, I think. But otherwise, maybe you guys should rethink that. I was wondering if you thought about why rents are so high on State Street. And I think it's because there's a perceived value that all the people walking, that there'll be a lot of people walking by. But I think the reality is more like all these previous comments from the people at your council chambers, which is State Street is really about homeless people and
Your
electric
time
bikes.
is up,
So-
Mr. Ashland.
All right, I'll call back. Thanks, guys.
Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Sharon Rich. Sharon Rich, please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sharon Rich. I'm president of the newly formed nonprofit Friends of State Street. We were born from the 2020 charrette as volunteers who believe in building a local nonprofit that could support the Create State Master Plan process. Our mission is not only to support the businesses, organizations, and surrounding neighborhoods of State Street during this
Oh.
process.
Excuse me. Yeah.
The item on the
Yeah,
agenda?
you're exactly right. Speaker's name again, please? Yeah, Ms.
Sharon
Rich,
Rich.
that is an agendized item, so we'll have to wait to hear on that until we have that item.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. You can check in later on. All right, further public speakers online?
No, Mr. Mayor, no further public speakers on public comment.
All right, very good. With that, we'll close public comment and move to consent calendar. Do you have some items to read?
Yes. Item 2, establishment of a standing finance committee, ordinance adoption, recommendation of the council adopt by reading of title only, an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending the Santa Barbara Municipal Code to add chapter 2.06 to establish a standing finance committee and rescind resolution number 94130. Number 3, ordinance committee process revisions, ordinance adoption, recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only, an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending chapter 2.05 of the municipal code pertaining to the powers and duties of the ordinance committee. Item 4, authorize execution of the Clean Water State Revolving Fund installation sale agreement for the Braemar Lift Station Rehabilitation Project, ordinance introduction and agreement. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only, an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara authorizing the execution of the installation sale agreement with the State Water Resources Control Board for the Braemar Lift Station Rehabilitation Project, project number C0686021110. Item 6, municipal code amendments pertaining to Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show, ordinance introduction. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only, an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending the municipal code by amending chapter 15.08 pertaining to the Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show. Item 6, resolution of intention to modify the management district plan of the Santa Barbara South Coast Tourism Business Improvement District resolution. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara declaring its intention to modify the existing Santa Barbara South Coast Tourism Business Improvement District. And item 7, contracts for construction of fiscal year 2022B pavement maintenance project and program support resolution agreement. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only, a resolution of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 22059, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2023 to appropriate 2023 local service transportation program grant funds and city funds for fiscal year 2022B pavement maintenance program pavement maintenance project and program support.
All right, very good. Did you read item 4 by any chance? You did. Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and read item 10 as well, because there's some speakers for that.
Item 10, agreement with CityNet, $450,000 to provide street outreach, case management, and housing navigation services agreement.
Very good. And Mr. Jordan, did you have an item to pull?
On number 10, I have a couple questions and some comments.
Okay, very good. Alrighty then. We'll go ahead and, why don't you go ahead with your questions on item 10, then we'll move on to that, the rest of the speakers.
Thanks.
You have questions? Just questions, right?
So a couple comments too. Do you want them separate or just?
Yes.
throw them at the end? Okay.
Because we have speakers.
Hi, Ms. Stotts, how are you? So on the re-up for CityNet, I wondered if you could just catch me back up on the role or the lack of role in this contract and the HMIS quandary, and whether they are being contracted to make sure that they are entering clients or potential clients into HMIS, and even, it's been long enough since we've talked, even if that's still a requirement to play in the county's financing sandbox.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan, that is correct. They are still required as we are participants in the continuum of care, and as such, we are participants in HMIS. So anybody that we subcontract to would still be required to use HMIS, and we specified utilization of that software.
So then, just to drill down a little bit, is that one of our requirements when they're gaining a client out on the street? That, because I know there's an expense, there's a time and or a person and an expense to have those people put them into that process, and is that one of our requirements with the contracted group?
It is, yes.
Okay. The other question is a pretty simple one too. I still see the NNCs and the Neighborhood Navigation Centers as a great success and kind of a pooling or attractant center, at least the one in the Creo lot and the one down at the Rescue Mission are the two that I'm most familiar with, and Thursday night Alameda Park too. And so is it just a given that CityNet services will go to those routinely to find clients that are being attracted with the services there?
That is correct. That's their part of their agreement and their response to our request for proposals. CityNet indicated that participating in neighborhood navigation centers would be part of their workload.
Thanks so much. And Mr. Mayor, I'll have a couple comments when that time is right.
Very good. Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. I also have a couple questions on item 10. The first is, or the primary is, the contract with CityNet is for citywide for the normal, but we're expanding it into evenings and weekends. But as we've heard there from today on East Beach, but also in Upper State Street and in that area, there's significant challenges, as well as the east side on Milpas area. So can you explain just how those neighborhoods and other parts of the city outside of downtown and the beach area are being served by this contract?
The citywide contract, Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, the citywide contract is more expansive in that there is not just outreach, but there's case management and housing navigation services. So it's the full spectrum of services to ultimately get people off the street. And those will be continuing from Monday through Thursday from 7:30 a.m. to 6 in the evening. So the daily hours have been extended. The weekend outreach, because there are most of the facilities that CityNet would coordinate with, such as Be Well or some of the more crisis-intensive units or other offices are often closed, it would be more of a relationship building, de-escalation, getting them to accept services.
And that's currently proposed today would be in the downtown State Street in West Beach?
Yes, that would be on State Street from Mitchell to Reina all the way to the waterfront, and then the waterfront from Pershing Park all the way down to Chase Palm Park.
And would you say that if this gets adopted and those extra hours in those neighborhoods, we'll be monitoring, tracking data, and also over time looking at if there are issues in other parts of town that we in the future might be able to expand to at a later time?
Yes, this is a first step for us in that this is the first time we've gotten nighttime and weekend outreach. So we'd love to see how this works out and find ways to expand it if we find it successful.
Thank you.
Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. So in follow-up, as CityNet is now having contracts with the county also and more regionally, how has our relationship or the focus on the city changed, or has it changed, or do we anticipate any change in that level of service?
Councilmember Snyder and Mayor Rouse, I think the service is much more expanded because the county, we do have CityNet, and we've expanded that relationship, but there's also other service providers now that we didn't have before, so they work together really well. Good Samaritan is one example that is well known, and PATH now has their street outreach provider that also works on the east side. So the services have expanded vastly, and this is another tool in our toolbox.
Thank you. I think that's important to address that concern. And then just in follow-up to our speakers today, how is criminal activity with outreach and how is that fine line handled when there is outreach being done, but there is illegal activity as well?
Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Stead, I apologize. I was actually engaging with our concerned residents, so I wasn't able to sit right away to be able to answer questions on this consent agenda item. We are working very closely with the police department. It is absolutely our mission and our philosophy to make sure that our city and every neighborhood is safe and vibrant. We are really working with residents to address both illegal activity, that enforcement, arrests, following through in terms of processing those arrests through county jail, all of which need to be done to address substance abuse, public intoxication, loitering. We have small burglaries, petty theft that are happening more frequently in our cities. So that, for how we address unhoused, absolutely is prioritization is enforcement. On other areas where we know people are in need, they're dealing with mental health challenges, that we're deploying other tools in the toolbox, as Ms. Stott said. We have our co-response team, we have our behavioral health, behavioral wellness, homeless outreach team services, and we're working in coordination with police. So enforcement is that option when we're addressing illegal activity, and know that activity that impacts absolutely the safety of our neighborhoods, but when people just need support and they need to be able to get the holistic care that's required to get them out of an unhoused environment, but the support that they need overall, that we're working with the appropriate agencies to do that.
Thank you.
All right, very good. I'm going to go ahead and take the other public speakers for this. We have one other comment for another item, but with level on item 10, we'll take the public speakers. So we'll start with Catherine Soto Vasquez first.
Hello, Mayor Rouse and council members. My name is Catherine Soto Vasquez, Associate Director of SB Act. So I'm here on behalf of SB Act and our continued partnership. I want to commemorate the City of Santa Barbara for taking this step and commitment and continued support of our unhoused neighbors. I also want to highlight the work that is being done in our regional action plan meetings and walkabouts that have directly resulted in the advocacy from the downtown business community and residents. The work we all do on these calls every month allow us to have an immediate impact as we work towards solutions and ultimately supporting those living on the streets. This work doesn't and shouldn't end here, as we've been hearing from other calls and other comments today. The city needs to continue to invest in the Act on Homelessness strategic plan and goals. While this expansion of outreach will allow for better access to services, people need somewhere to go. So I urge the city to continue to prioritize resources to increase case management services and shelter beds throughout the city. But more importantly, prioritizing funding for affordable housing to increase housing units throughout our community, and especially low-income units. I also want to show appreciation for the work CityNet has been doing over the last few years. I couldn't imagine a better provider with a proven record of collaboration and quality of care that is rooted in their culture. While there is no one solution that will alleviate the impacts that we all see and feel as a community and for those living on the streets, I'm confident that this new outreach contract will allow us to continue to move the needle forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Elander is the next speaker on this item.
Mayor, City Council, community members, as Executive Director of Downtown Santa Barbara, I've had the opportunity to work with CityNet over the past several years to positive end to mitigate issues around homelessness. As you've heard from the speakers today and leading up to today, mitigating issues around homelessness as well as unsafe behavior downtown are top issues that businesses and the community would like to address locally. I'm happy to see that there's an expanded level of service for CityNet on the docket for today. The service level that they're currently offering is not quite enough to be able to address issues, and this is absolutely critical service to enhance not only services for individuals experiencing homelessness to be able to get through the systems, but also to enhance the economic vitality of our beloved downtown district. In addition, this service level will go a long way to get people the help and support they need while increasing their ability to lift them up and move them off of the streets of downtown. This is one critical part of a multi-pronged approach to create a safe, welcoming downtown for our community that wants to visit time and time again. A continued focus, as the previous speaker said, on affordable housing, patrol services, as well as activations downtown are of critical importance. Thank you for considering this contract.
Thank you. Further speakers?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll go back to council for comment. Mr. Jordan.
Catching on to that little button, aren't I? So, thank you,
To
Mr.
look
Mayor.
at you anymore.
First, I'd just like to say I see Mr. Fieldhouse out there with a couple of his crew, and I thank Ms. Soto Vasquez for being here today. It's the impact. I'm glad we're going where we're going today because the impacts do not follow a normal workday that are out there. And I know all the executive team has been hearing about nights. You know, State Street becomes a way different place Tuesday night at 9 o'clock than it is at 5 o'clock when we've been checking out lately and going home. Same for the weekends. So I'm appreciative that we get there. It is a tough job. I'm sorry we lost some of the public speakers because while I agree that the impacts are frequently broad and often very personal, it is a tough job by people that work almost thanklessly, probably for not much money when you boil it down to the hourly pay, to try and make effective and positive change in this area. We're burdened with legal constraints, regional law enforcement and jail constraints, and oftentimes the highest exposure impacts you see on the street are the worst ones to have to try and address in the areas we play. So I'm really thankful we're getting to weeknights and weekends. One suggestion I would have to staff, and specifically in regards to, we've just kind of carved out a couple areas, and that would be not to wait a year to see how effective going to weeknights and weekends are, but to maybe look at it in 6 months. And then if there are tangible gains in case, in whatever we call them, when they become a, yeah, thank you, Barbara, I know you're nodding, you know what I'm stammering through, is when we pick up a client as a real client, we get them into the system, and if all of a sudden our presence is in the evening or on the weekends is increasing that rate, that we then look at putting additional resources into it in other places in the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman.
I'll second what Councilmember Jordan just discussed, and I do want to give my support to looking at reevaluating this, the expanded hours and on weekends and nights, and seeing if it is possible, not a year from now, but say 6 months from now, to look at other parts of the city. I want to acknowledge the speakers that spoke today, and there are challenges throughout the city. And this action today by no means is minimizing those. It's actually expanding a program to see how it works. And then if we need to, we can evaluate on expanding it to other parts of town. But to do something citywide right now when we don't know how the program would work would not ultimately build the type of program we need to provide the extra enhancements for services, but also safety that we're looking at. So I'm supportive of bringing it back sooner than a year from now, assuming we have some good data.
All right, very good. Prior to acting on this item, I do have a request to speak on a couple more items. Mr. Thunderstriker, you want to come on up and... This is item 4, I believe.
I'll just do 4 and 6 because I don't need a whole 3 minutes.
Okay, that'd be just fine.
Number 4, I just wanted to mention, I've been talking about a desalination plant and we're dealing with drought and all this other kinds of stuff. And since it's going to the state water resources, maybe just a note that, you know, if we could upgrade or even have new desalination facilities and they could maybe pump water into our lakes, which have like a 30% reservoir height or something, I don't know. And Santa Barbara, we all like Santa Barbara or else we wouldn't be here, or most of us. It's kind of sexy, and so maybe we could sell the water or, of course, give it to other countries who are also having issues, you know, as you know, a international gesture. And 6, and I wanted to mention on 6, maybe they could consider deciding what to do about the leash laws, because a lot of the beaches smell like pee, and I think that if we did want to increase the tourism, that could be one way.
All right, thank you. All righty, as far as voting on consent, do we need to take anything separately, or are we going to be able to do this all together? Anybody need to pull anything for a separate vote?
I'll move the full calendar.
Move full calendar by Jordan, second by
Mayor
Harmon.
Rouse, just excluding item 13, which we pulled.
Excluding mine, thank you for reminding me.
Thank you.
Okay, that works for the maker and the seconder of the motion, very good. And now we get to vote on our new machines here for the first time. How about that? How do you do that?
All right, thank you for your patience. This is a motion for
21st century.
the entirety of the consent calendar except for item 13, a motion by Councilmember Jordan, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Harmon. This will be our first vote.
Okay.
Go ahead and vote.
And what do we have for our contestants? Johnny, there we go.
All right.
And a unanimous tote board.
Exactly.
I am
We
so
have-
impressed.
Motion carries unanimously.
It worked. The eagle has landed. Okay, very good. I'm sorry, acting so surprised. I just, shouldn't go that way. Very good. All right, we will move on to our regular agenda from now. Madam Clerk, you have an item to read.
I do. Item 14, appointment of Mayor Pro Tempore, Ordinance Committee, and Finance Committee.
All righty, very good. So, we come up on the Mayor Pro Tem appointment, and we have two candidates. One is Mr. Jordan, and one is Ms. Gutierrez. And my understanding is that Ms. Gutierrez is willing to serve. Mr. Jordan would like to defer. Am I correct? Going alphabetically, as he said. Any discussion? Ms. Sneddon?
I just want to make sure that that was a joke about going alphabetically.
Well, not really, because I think you have to figure out how to manage that in a reasonable manner that takes out all unreasonable types of considerations, and we both came on board the same day, same time.
Oh, so just alphabetical between the two of you on this particular one, but we're not resetting the whole
No, we're not letting
rotation.
Mike
Okay.
make the rules here, no.
Thank you. That was my
Okay, very
question.
good.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask for a vote on that. To approve Ms. Gutierrez as the Mayor Pro Tem.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could once again get the mover and the seconder for that.
Very good.
I'll move.
Moved by Friedman, second by Oscar Gutierrez. Let's have the tote board, please.
Very good. So the motion by Councilmember Friedman, seconded by Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez to appoint Alejandro Gutierrez as Mayor Pro Tempore. Start our vote. Go ahead.
All right, very good.
All right, motion carries unanimously.
Congratulations, Ms. Gutierrez. Ms. Harmon, thank you for your service. All the fun arguments we had. Okay, very good. We will move on to our committees of both Ordinance and Finance. And currently, our Ordinance Committee is chaired by Ms. Sneddon and also contains Oscar Gutierrez and Michael Jordan. Is there any,
So let me I'll cut to the chase for you for that. We rotate those. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't push the button.
right,
Go.
Ms. Sneddon. Come on, get with the program.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. In the tradition of ordinance committee, we rotate, and I believe the next, I'd like to stay on ordinance, and I believe the next in line for rotation would be Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez, who I'd like to nominate.
I'll second that then motion then.
Okay, so moved by Sneddon, seconded by Jordan to make Mr. Gutierrez the chair, and I believe maintain status quo as to membership on the ordinance committee. Is that part of the motion as well? Okay, very good. We'll go for a vote.
Very good. And that is motion by Councilmember Jordan, seconded by, motion by Councilmember Sneddon, seconded by Councilmember Jordan, to retain the status quo on membership of the ordinance committee, which means the ordinance committee would include Councilmember Sneddon, Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez, and Councilmember Jordan, and to have Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez to be chair. Correct? Okay. We'll vote on that.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. We'll move on to Finance Committee.
Very good. That motion carried unanimously.
And do I have a, actually, Finance isn't on the list, is it? Are we settled on? It's not on this.
Mayor Rouse, Finance Committee is on the list. It's currently chaired by Councilmember Friedman with
Okay.
members Harmon and Alejandra Gutierrez.
All right, very good. I will take a motion as to what we would do about that. Ms. Harmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to propose, if Chair Friedman is amenable, that he continues in that role, if that works for Councilmember Gutierrez as well. He runs a fantastic Finance Committee, and we've had a great experience the last couple of years with him as chair. So I would move that the Finance Committee maintains its current membership and that Chair Friedman stays in his role as chair of the Finance Committee.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? Okay. I was going to get a second, and then we can make questions. Second by Gutierrez. Okay, Alejandro Gutierrez. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. So this comment is in no way about the service of Councilmember Friedman. Has it been 5 years as finance chair or 3? And I'll just continue to express that I believe that these positions should rotate. And then it would be back again in the 3 years, just as ordinance does and as has been the tradition. But I'll just voice that.
Okay, Mr. Friedman.
I'll just say, appreciate your comments, Councilmember Sneddon, and it's been not 5 years, I think 3, but I'm willing to serve, and this year in particular, we are working on the fiscal sustainability initiative that we put forward, and we're right in the middle of it, so serving another year in this case, there's a lot of work that's already been done and going forward, so I'm happy to serve again in this instance. Thank you.
All right, very good. Well, absence of substitute motion, there is a motion on the floor. Any further comment? Let's go ahead and go for a vote, please.
Very good. This is a motion by Councilmember Harmon, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez, to keep the members of the Finance Committee the status quo, those members being Mayor Pro Tem Alejandro Gutierrez, Councilmember Friedman, and Councilmember Harmon, and to retain Councilmember Friedman as chair. Good? Okay, we'll start the vote. Okay, and that motion carries unanimously.
Okay, well, the game show's going pretty well so far. Let's go to advisory groups, liaisons. Okay. Have you, hopefully you've all had a chance to review your assignments and have any other requests for changes or status quo? So I'm going to go down the list alphabetically, which I can't see anymore because of the request to speak thing. I know, but I don't know if it's exactly the same.
Mayor Rouse and council members, yes, I wanted to point out that the list that was distributed with the agenda item had some clerical mistakes. So an update of those clerical mistakes was sent to you by email. The list that is here is updated with what we believe to be the current membership. Also, for the purpose of efficiency, why don't we see if there are no changes to the various, if there are no changes to the membership, let's take those all as one item and then hold aside the ones where there are items so we don't take a vote on every one if there's no change to the membership.
That's an excellent suggestion. Thank you, madam. Okay. So here we are. Ms. Harmon wants to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have loved serving on the Access Advisory Committee as the liaison. It's just an incredible group of people, but unfortunately, every meeting conflicts with the Coastal Commission, so I am not able to attend, and Councilmember Gutierrez has been attending in my stead, so I would like to propose, and I think he's amenable, that he take over in that role, and if he ever needs a second and Coastal Commission isn't, I can fill in for him, but that works for everyone.
And then, Madam Administrator, do we need to do a motion and a second on all these, or can we just appoint by acclamation? Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say that you would go through the entire list and get everything in order, making the changes that you want, and then you could do a motion and a second to approve the list as a whole.
All right, very good. Okay. Let's go to the, next speaker, Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I believe the State Street Master Planning Committee is not on the list, standing committee.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Sutton, it is the State Street Advisory Committee, and it is on the list. It is under standing committees with Oscar Gutierrez, Megan Harmon, and yourself.
That's not the correct people. We had a State Street Advisory Committee, and then we came up with the State Street Master Plan Committee liaisons.
Which we're calling the State Street Advisory Committee. So if that's not correct, we will make that correction. I did actually also question that because we did eliminate the ad hoc committee that included these three, and I noticed they were the same. So can you please give me the correct participants and we can act on that?
I'd like to propose for the State Street Master Plan Committee, it is currently Councilmember Jordan, Councilmember Harmon, and Councilmember Alejandra Gutierrez, and I would like to request to be on that committee.
Mayor, council members, to my understanding, the committee that's overseeing the Master Planning Committee is the State Street Advisory Committee, which is what I believe you're asking to be a member of.
I'm sorry for the confusion. We had a State Street Advisory Committee, which was Oscar Gutierrez, Harmon, and Sneddon, and if that were still the committee, those would still be the members.
I'm sorry, and again, I'm not trying to debate you. I'm looking at my list, which I regretfully is not as, somehow got a little jumbled, but we had that under the ad hoc committees as the State Street Subcommittee is what we had called that.
For the master planning?
No, that was the ad hoc one that dissolved. The State Street Advisory Committee is the one that is working with the much larger group on the master plan. So that's the one that is called State Street Advisory Committee, which is under your standing committees.
And is it standing committee or is it liaison to these standing committees?
It is the standing committee.
Okay, so it has not the right names of the members listed.
Correct, yes. And so I've made a note, it's currently Jordan, Harmon, and Oscar Gutierrez.
It is not.
Alejandra.
It is.
Oh, excuse me, Alejandra Gutierrez.
My concern is just that it's not reflected on, so it's the standing committee, the State Street Advisory Committee,
Correct. We will take a note. As I said, there are a number of clerical errors on this. This is another one that we did not catch. So I hear what you're saying. I agree. That is correct. Unless there is any dissent from you, we'll make a note of that, but it doesn't keep you from making an action on it today.
Okay, then I would like to request to be on that committee.
Okay, so noted. All right, very good. I have Ms. Gutierrez, you have a comment or question?
She can take my spot.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Mr. Jordan.
I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right stuff. So on the standing committees, you're calling the State Street Advisory Committee, that is now the master plan? That is the master planning one, and the names are wrong, right?
That's correct.
And then on the next page, you have a State Street Subcommittee.
And that was an ad hoc committee that was developed at the same time as land development.
And then we are actually adding on the ad hoc interim operations committee.
You created that last year. We are continuing it in case anyone wants to switch membership on that.
That'll be under the ad hoc section?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on down to any other changes from status quo requested by members? Or requests and/or deletions? I have Mr. Jordan.
I just apologize for not doing this in advance, but Ms. Harmon, are you married to the ABR? And the reason I ask that is I'm looking to trade for single-family design board. It seems like every time I see an agenda for the single-family design board, 3 out of 4 projects are on the Mesa and in my district, and it just, well, as ABR tends to roam all the way around the whole city, and just wondering if that appeals to you. Okay. Yeah, I'll go SFDB, and Ms. Harmon will go to ABR.
So this is Harmon at ABR?
Thank you so much.
And then Jordan down here, okay. All right, further changes or requests? We'll do this in sections. We'll do advisory groups first, standing committees next, and then ad hoc after that.
Mayor Rouse, I would suggest that you first take a motion for all of those that have not changed, and then we will tell you those that which have changed, and we can do
Okay.
those. So
Is everyone clear on the proposed changes, and if so?
Or Mayor Rouse, let me just call those out first, so we can get those out of the way. So
Okay.
you have suggested that there be a change to the membership of the Access Advisory Committee to have Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez be the liaison.
Correct.
You have suggested that Councilmember Megan Harmon become the liaison to the Architectural Board of Review, with Alejandra Gutierrez being her alternate. I mean, excuse me, alternate, yes, alternate is Alejandra Gutierrez. You have requested that Councilmember Jordan be assigned to the single-family, yes, to the, I screwed that one up. You have, yes, to the Single-Family Design Board with alternate as Alejandra Gutierrez.
Correct.
You have requested that what we have down as the State Street Advisory Committee, which I want to clarify is the large committee of public and council working with a consultant on the master plan, will now be comprised of council members Jordan, Harmon, and Sneddon. And those are all the changes I have.
Mr. Friedman.
Just a question. Councilmember Sneddon and I and Councilmember Jordan are on the homeless ad hoc committee, and whether or not we should codify that in here, or should we just leave it off right now?
Mayor Rouse and council members, and with deference to your city attorney, I think that realistically, the ad hoc committees are appointed for short-term single purpose, so really it is more appropriate that we do not change the membership of those, and because they were appointed for short-term single purpose.
Just to clarify, it wasn't to change the membership, it was that it's not listed
It
on
will
the-
still continue.
Okay, so it's still continuing. Okay, thank you. That's just all I needed.
Further comments or changes or requests? Mr. Jordan?
Rebecca, are you just dealing with the first page first?
No, Councilmember Jordan, I was suggesting the entirety, but if you'd
There
like
were
to.
two other changes that were added on an email from Ms. Gorman, and that was to add the name of the State Street Interim Operations Ad Hoc Committee, which is currently not on either one of these pages.
It's on our corrected one.
So the one I got at 1:30 is not the corrected one then, right? Okay, I'm sorry. And then did we add the Park Foundation with Mr. Friedman?
We did, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, further comments or questions? I would entertain a motion as corrected and amended.
I'll make the motion according to those changes.
Second.
Okay, moved by Jordan, second by Harmon.
Okay, this is a motion by Councilmember Jordan, seconded by Councilmember Harmon on the Access Advisory, Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez with the, to be appointed as the liaison. For ABR, Councilmember Harmon to be appointed as liaison with Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez as alternate. No. For SFDB, Councilmember Jordan to be appointed as liaison with Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez as alternate. For the State Street Advisory Committee, the large committee of the public and council, and some council members, that will be Councilmembers Jordan, Harmon, and Sneddon. And that's it for this? Okay, we'll take that vote.
Okay, maker of the motion, everything good?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
the question I'm asking is why don't we get master plan into that committee's name? Is there a reason why? To help?
I will have to look into that. I certainly have no trouble. If you want to rename it, why don't you just add it in there? We'll say, we've been calling it the State Street Advisory Committee, and Ms. Harris is here. I think we have a large number of documents that refer to it as the State Street Advisory Committee. I think for consistency, that makes more sense.
Whatever you feel best. You'll probably just have to keep reminding some of us who have seen 3 State Street Advisory Committees in the last 3 years.
All right, let's go to the tote board. Lyrics is down? You broke it already? Give you one job. Hey. The 21st century. We good?
Motion carries unanimous
We
vote.
have a winner, thank you. Okay, very good. Let's go to the State Street.
Mayor, else before you move on, the rest of the council, I want to make clear, because my recommendation was that you deal with the changes first and then take the remainder. I don't know whether the
I think
maker
we
of the
voted
motion
as a slate, did
intended
we
it to
not?
be the entirety. Great.
Yeah, I think we were as amended, so I think we're good. Madam Clerk, would you read the next item, please?
Certainly. Next item is State Street Create State Master Plan Update.
Ms. Harris.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Tess Harris, and I'm the city's State Street Master Planner. Next to me is Matt Schawaker, the Urban Design Director with MIG, and he and I will be presenting today. Matt and the MIG team bring with them experience around the country on downtown revitalization. They also bring with them designers and engineers, and we're really lucky to have them. Also with us today is Timmy Bolton, sitting to my left, the project planner, and then we have Mr. Eli Isaacson, the community development director as well, and other city staff available should there be questions. We're here to provide you with an update on Create State, the State Street Master Plan, and what we've been up to over the last 5 months. Last time we were before you was for approving a contract with MIG in July. And so really excited to tell you about the community engagement efforts, about existing conditions, technical analysis that's been done, and then some of the emerging trends that we're seeing from the survey and design workshop exercises. So I want to take a moment to remind us of how we got here today. City Council saw a need to act and rethink our downtown, and it's that leadership that sparked the initiation of the State Street Master Plan, and that got us to think in a comprehensive way about how our downtown should best serve our community. We are ahead of many cities across the country because of this. While there are many communities focused solely on parklets, ours is thinking bigger and bolder for what a future downtown can look like. We're focusing on the present, but we're also looking ahead. To that end, the future of downtown will likely look very different from what it looks like today. Countless community members, as you'll hear in the presentation, have come out and provided their input on what they want to see or perhaps don't want to see in our downtown. The community is demanding change, and you'll hear more about that in the presentation. Create State is hearing from the community, understanding the city's needs and constraints, and making decisions that benefit and reflect the community's values as a whole. We're set up for success. We have great weather. We also have really great infrastructure that's right downtown. We have a great business industry. We have community members that are excited to be downtown, and all of that energy and effort can just be improved upon. The Create State team has done a lot already to lay the groundwork for what potential design concepts can look like. We completed the first phase, which you'll see on the far left-hand side, the existing conditions and vision phase, and we're now in phase 2 of the project, the urban design framework stage. This stage includes compiling technical data, the community engagement and survey feedback, and then putting all of that information together into 3 design concepts that are going to be released in an April to May timeframe. If you look into the 3rd phase, preliminary and preferred concepts, that's where we're coming up on. In August, we'll have a preferred design concept, meaning a final concept coming from those 3. And then we're still on track for a completion date between December of 2023 to February of 2024. So Matt will now share some of what we've learned from the existing conditions analysis, a lot of the technical data around infrastructure, land uses, economic analysis, and transportation.
Thank you, Tess. It's a pleasure to be here. As Tess said, we've been undergoing an analysis of the existing conditions, and I'm going to just touch on sort of some of the highlights, a summary of this in a few categories: urban fabric, mobility and transportation, economic conditions, and then utilities. I'd say the headline, the first conclusion that we've come to is we don't see any existing condition that really is a strong barrier, bars the vision that's emerging from the community from being implemented. It's starting with the urban fabric meaning the physical and spatial fabric of downtown and State Street provides really an excellent foundation to achieve the vision that's emerging from the community. A couple details, amazing, every 40 feet you have a storefront. That means at a walking pace, every 7 to 10 seconds or so, you've got a new storefront, new stimulus. That keeps you engaged and activated and sort of stimulated as you walk down the street. We can go to the next. The block sizes are about 450 feet. As you well know, that's a walkable distance. The paseos that interlace all those blocks are an incredible asset as well. We skipped through a quick slide there, but as you all well know as well, the historic buildings, the historic fabric in the community is another incredible asset. Activation-wise, go to the next one. Thanks. The ground floor, is a good mix of retail and and restaurants and other uses, diverse mix that activate the street. There's a few vacancies that aren't showing on that map, but we have that updated. We know that's an issue. One thing that is really key, and you can see in the feedback and from the community about how, and not just how and where, but when State Street is activated. If you go to the first slide, you'll know during weekdays, the ground floor is active, all the shops are open, the restaurants are open. It's really genuinely activated for the entire length of the corridor. When you go to an evening, it's really activated at the ends. And if you look at that land use map, as you all well know, there's concentrations of restaurants at either end. The core few blocks, the 900, 800, and 700 block, fewer restaurants, less evening activity. I think that's reflected in some of the comments we've heard. And then again, on the weekend, during the day, it's generally activated through the entire corridor. So as we get into some of the feedback we've heard from the community, it's really consistent with that, where they'd like to see more things going on. Mobility, really downtown and State Street are well connected to the city through multiple modes for driving. The parking has ample supply. There is good bike connections, excellent transit connections. There are, 9 bus stops serving over 12 different routes that stop within a block of State Street. With the current existing bike lanes and currently planned bike lanes, you're never more than a block and a half away from a bike lane crossing State Street, so you're well connected for bikes. And we'll go through some of the data in a minute here, but closing State Streets to cars has made it safer. We asked in the survey how people currently travel to or on or around State Street. It's a bit of a general question, and you could answer, if you've taken it, you know this, you could answer more than one category. That's why this adds up to well over 100%. A lot of people obviously drive to get downtown, but there's a lot of walking, a lot of bike and scooter, and we'll talk in a minute about some of the survey answers of what people would like to see. I'll add, overwhelmingly, people wanted to see it closed, but we'll get to that. Stay close to cars. This is some of the data on collisions so you can see with the closure in the light blue bars on the bottom, all of those total collisions, total injuries, intersections with multiple collisions, those have all gone down with the closure of State Street to cars. But we do know that is statistics about vehicle collisions with others. We know there's an issue with bikes that remains. That's a big question moving forward. Economic development, I think one of the real highlights of this is the third bullet. There are trends about restaurants and bars versus apparel and versus different types of retail and how they've done over the past years and how retail is changing. But all of these trends that we've seen and our consultant has measured on State Street started before the pandemic. So they're not shifting with the pandemic. These are pre-pandemic trends. Restaurants and bars and apparel are the top performers. Specialty retail is the only category that has declined over the last between 2016 and 2021. And we did do a deep dive into the utilization of the city-owned parking lots through the whole corridor. There are multiple parking lots that are underutilized, and those are good opportunities for redevelopment, potentially for housing or other uses. I think we can go through that. We have undertaken with our economics consultant a few case studies. One, Pearl Street in Boulder, 4-block pedestrianized mall in downtown Boulder, started in 1977. It's been wildly successful. One of the key features in it is it's got a lot of children's play spaces deliberately designed for families. That's a feedback we'll talk about more later. It's got a good mix of local and chain. The chain stores match Boulder's lifestyle, meaning there's a North Face and a Patagonia and everything mountain. So the national chains are there, but they fit the culture of Boulder. And starting in really with COVID, but also continuing in 2022, the mall has been a bit extended on either side in the same sense that State has with a 5-year pilot for outdoor dining. So those have been very successful as well. That's a conversation going on in Boulder, how to perhaps extend the mall in what form, very similar to the conversation going on here. Greenville was the second one, and pedestrian oriented is the key there. We'll talk a little bit about how they handled restaurant patios. So they have a high concentration, you can see over 110 restaurants in their 10 blocks. San Luis Obispo, again, planning efforts are leading towards more, an emphasis on pedestrians in downtown. One of the interesting things they did with their permanent outdoor dining program was create a specific plaza for dining in it, for people that do takeout, not necessarily serviced, waiters, but takeout and all concentrated in a central active plaza. It's an interesting idea. So those are, from the economics, there's some key takeaways that I think are important. Outdoor dining is an important part of the experience. It's one of the most active, most valued things people come to State Street to do. There are obviously a lot of other reasons people come, but in all those cases in the case studies, they are regulated. Outdoor patios are regulated in a number of ways, and that's a key aspect of how they're successful. They often include fees to maintain and keep them up. Pedestrians, cyclists, and mixed uses, all of those are key to the success as well. And again, to the local stores like Boulder, local is important, but it doesn't have to be all local. National brands that fit the culture of the place, I think, should be welcomed. And then all of them have private investment and tax assessments to help fund and activate and maintain that public space. And lastly, utilities. And we'll just say this one, the very inspiring photo. Stormwater, the utilities and infrastructure, I think, generally support the vision. We are doing a little bit more detailed dive into the age, condition, some of those things. The key one there is stormwater quality. There are probably likely upgrades to stormwater water quality infrastructure as well as drainage capacity infrastructure needed to support the vision. And there's, like I said, a lot of utilities in the area. We can go through that in more detail.
Thanks, Matt. I'm going to talk a little bit about our community engagement efforts over the last few months. And I want to start out by really emphasizing that the plan is unique in that community engagement is one of the primary, if not the most important aspect of this project. We're really thinking about restructuring a street into a community space. And so understanding what the community needs and wants are is really critical to this overall process. We recognize that the plan needs to be designed for locals and that will bring both locals and tourists. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the outreach approach. We focused on inclusive and extensive outreach to try to maximize the community response that we've received. We've held events on State Street, and then we went into the community and held events to try to reach people where they were. We held events at different times of the day and different days of the week. We also held the same event multiple times so that we could try to get different people that have different schedules at those events. We created a website for the project, statestreet.santabarbaraca.gov. Happy to say we've got about 500 subscribers to our newsletter so far. If you're not on there, hope you'll join us on that and get updated regularly. We also have a social media presence on Instagram, and we've taken out advertisements for some of the various events that we've had, both the open house and then the design workshop through a variety of news outlets. We also had radio. We've been in Newshawk and the Montecito Journal, The Independent, The Voice, KUIT, and then City News and Brief, and The Brief, which is a utility bill insert, had a segment on the survey for State Street as well. So in November, we released the community survey that over 6,000 people have engaged with. We've had over 100 in-person events and stakeholder meetings where we're estimating that we reached about at least 1,500 people. We tracked demographic data through the survey. It helped gauge how representative the sample of responses were. We received responses from all neighborhoods, from ages 10 to over 90, and from all backgrounds. And we found that some of the most interesting demographic data was that over half of the responses were from people that live or work downtown. We also had 136 downtown business owners take the survey. And then we had a lot of local representation throughout Santa Barbara, which is shown on the right-hand side of the slide. This is what the community told us for why they come downtown today. So probably no surprise, eating and drinking is the large percentage, almost 90%. But I also want to highlight, all of these activities, passive and social activities, really have shown their importance. So you'll see strolling at over 50% as well. People come down to the space just to be in the space. The survey launched the same time as our open house event in November. It was held on the 1200 block of State Street at a vacant storefront. We had posters in English and Spanish of questions similar to the survey. and we asked members of the public to stop by and share what they hope to see downtown and on State Street in the future. We had about 500 people join us during the 2-day event. We were really thrilled by that turnout. These are some photos of this space. And this slide just shows different people interacting with the posters and telling us what they want downtown to include. And I want to highlight the State Street Advisory Committee also participated as facilitators during this open house event. One of our favorite things was from the open house was asking people why they love State Street or what they like about downtown. So I'm going to just bear with me. I'm going to read some of the responses that we got. I love State Street because it is a place to be. I love State Street because it's the vibrant, fun part of the region. I love State Street because it brings people together. I love State Street because it can be our place to live, work, and play. And I love State Street because it's the heart of downtown. Those are a few of hundreds of responses that we got. And I'm reading it only to really emphasize that the community cares about downtown and already feels this excitement. And that can continue to be enhanced. We also really tried to meet people where they were and engage with people outside of the project area. So we had a number of events throughout the community. We held multiple open house events at Our Lady of Guadalupe. We tabled outside of Foodland. We attended events at the library, particularly library events that were targeted towards young children and families. The farmers market, we spoke with individuals experiencing homelessness at a neighborhood navigation center. And then we met with community groups and spoke with city committees, such as the Youth Council, and held a number of State Street Advisory Committee meetings over the last few months. And then we met with other organizations as well, such as the AIA Santa Barbara, the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Trust for Preservation, and the Friends of State Street and Visit Santa Barbara. And many of those organizations helped in the outreach efforts as well. We thought it was really important that youth had a voice in this initial planning effort, so we reached out to every school in the Santa Barbara Unified School District, and we went to fifth through 8th grade classrooms and had over 100 students take the survey. We tabled during lunch at Santa Barbara Junior High. We had a Spanish-only engagement event at Harding Elementary, and students provided us with some really imaginative and innovative ideas for downtown. So these are some of the ideas that one of the 5th grade classes gave me for the idea board. Things like a giant candy shop or a water park with a cafe, more things for little kids. But some of their ideas were really similar to what we've heard throughout the community. Things like more spaces for families or playgrounds, things like a park or more trees and outdoor seating. We held events in coordination with the library to activate State Street during this time and test how the city can do programming and what types of limitations and what types of opportunities there can be in downtown. And during these events, we had art activities like tie-dye and stamp making on State Street. The library on the Go Van was there to check out books twice a month. We tabled with the downtown organization's block parties and collaboratively worked with the downtown organization on events. And then we held the design workshops in December at 821 State Street. Over 2 days, we had about 300 people attend the 3-hour workshop activities and joined in teams to design blocks of State Street and discuss circulation. We started those workshops with a brief presentation on what the existing conditions were that Matt just mentioned and what some of the emerging trends were from the community survey at that time. People broke into groups to discuss and debate various design ideas, and groups started drawing ideas for 2 to 3 blocks of State Street. And those perspectives often shifted throughout the 3-hour discussion. City and State Street Advisory Committee members also participated and facilitated these design workshops. And then a representative from each group presented at the end of the design workshops the ideas. We had about 25 presentations during the workshop. Our aim for this workshop was to make the event exciting and to try to reach a variety of people and to make it possible for families to participate. So we provided free childcare on site. We partnered with the Arts Fund when we hosted an art show focused on creativity and innovation during the events. And then we had a projection outside the event Friday night, which you can see in the top center. And the State Street Ballet, in collaboration with the Santa Barbara County Office of Arts and Culture, came to the event and performed at the end of our workshop on Saturday. We had over 100 sketches from the December events. And so since December, we've been studying the different community design concepts and sketches to understand the trends that we're seeing from that and also from the survey. And Matt will talk about what we've learned as a result of those community engagement efforts and then what's next.
Great. Thanks, Tess. And so as we go through these trends, I'm going to say the trends we're seeing, they're a mix of the results from the initial visioning workshop, the design workshop that Tess just spoke of, and the survey themselves. So you'll see all of that coalescing into some clear trends. The first one here, and this is from the survey, the community supports the vision and principles established by the council. You can see the concurrence with creating a safe experience, bringing people downtown, being people-centric. Those principles are all generally supported by the community. The bottom one, facilitate housing. We've also heard through the visioning and the design workshop a lot of support for housing. So even though that shows up 41% there, we're hearing it very clearly in the other venues as well. The first and sort of most clear direction or trend we're hearing from the community is to keep State Street closed to cars. You can see 79%, which is really astounding, of the survey responses selected no cars on State Street. That is also supported by the design workshop sketches and those feedback as well. The second, and this is a little more technical and came through in the design workshop responses, but consistently create a flexible and adaptable street. In a lot of cases, a flush street was listed specifically, removing the curbs. Again, provide spaces for art and performance. You can see in the survey, temporary and permanent art and small performance spaces got 72 and 76% responses from the community. And in the design workshops and the vision sessions, again, we heard a strong response for those, strong support for those type of spaces, as well as diverse public seating and amenities. You can see again there in the little chart, 75%, as well as parks and open space, so green space, seating in the survey and the design workshop responses. Very clear feedback there. Also very clear to make State Street a great place for families. This is great to hear because we all often talk about a principle in urban design, 8 and 80. If you make it a great place for someone who's 8 and someone who's 80, you're going to have a successful, vibrant place because I'm going to be there anyways, right? Everyone in between. So that's great to hear, that support. That is consistent in all of the venues we've looked at. There's a number of ways to make this a great place for families and a great place for kids. Playgrounds was one of the things in the survey, but there's also other playful ways to bring play and excitement for families into it. There is a full-fledged playground like the upper left. In Philadelphia there, you see swings along the street, which are a great sort of fun, interactive way of inhabiting the street. On the upper right, that's in Denver. We did a prototyping festival where people came up with ideas, put them on the street for a period. That was simply a bunch of bike wheels put into a piece of interactive art, and you cannot imagine the amount of kids just standing there, spinning it as they walk by and staying there. So simple things can be wildly successful. I am involved in the redevelopment of the 16th Street Mall, the similar distance pedestrian mall in Denver, and so we're designing now playful elements like the bottom left to be what we call moments of joy along the street. So it doesn't have to be a full-fledged playground. It can be just a small moment of joy that can be used in a whole bunch of different ways, which can be as simple as that is a product called the spun chair, and we just set those out, and people crazy spinning them. We measured. You could see, we clearly measured. You could see how active the block was. The instant those were put away at 6 o'clock, activity decreased. They're incredibly simple and successful and flexible. You can move them from block to block. So it can be simple as well as more elaborate playground. Activate the center blocks. That was another clear trend we heard, that those center blocks that we talked about earlier, where there are fewer restaurants that get quieter in the evenings, those need to be activated in some way. We asked in the survey, what types of activities do you want to see on State Street? And we asked it in 3 questions in 3 categories: gathering activities, passive landscape activities, and street play. And the ones that you see that are sort of full color, not outlined, are where we got over 50% of people saying yes, because they could select more than one. So like we talked about in some of the other slides, temporary, permanent art exhibition, small performance spaces, seating, Parks and Open Space, very strong support there. The strongest of any of them, 90%, street trees. People just like green, and that makes sense. Stormwater infrastructure and energy infrastructure also were well supported, as well as street play. We talked about playgrounds, interactive installations, passive games. You can see active games and exercise were the least supported things. One of the things that was on that list that I didn't mention that didn't get a ton of support, but we think still warrants discussion is kiosks, because we put the picture on the survey said multi-purpose kiosk, and there's a lot of things that a kiosk can become, in a lot of ways those support life on the street. So we think that's an ongoing conversation. Kiosks can become food and beverage, can be a movable thing, can be retail. There's a lot of ways kiosks, and they're a great way to bring small businesses from the community into the street in a place where the rent is the highest. And so it actually can be part of an inclusive street strategy. We also heard very clearly to make it green from a sustainability standpoint, not only trees, but the water quality, all of those things. One of the quotes that was written on one of the design workshop board's responses was, "Build on Santa Barbara's legacy as an environmental leader." We loved that, so we put it on the slide. That can mean a lot of different things. Green infrastructure, these are all of these images are related to stormwater. So we know there's buildings, we got to capture the downspouts, the roof drainage, and handle that on the street. On the bottom left there, porous pavement is pavement that absorbs and infiltrates water through it, and also helps clean it, reduces the amount of drainage runoff. Bioswale planters on the left, that's a slightly lowered planter that water is accepting water, infiltrating it, cleaning it, slowing it down. And then the middle top there is a more, I'm going to say more expensive, to be blunt, solution, but very effective, not only for stormwater, but also for tree health, the suspended pavement, to get to full, the ideal amount of soil for a tree, as arborists are telling us these days, is around 800 to 1,000 cubic feet per tree. That's more than the small pits that we often build. That can get you there, and also handle and support stormwater drainage. So those were all clear areas where we got clear trends in good direction. There are some topics where more conversation is needed. The feedback from the different venues somewhat conflicts with each other. Bike access is one of those. More than 60% of the survey respondents preferred dedicated bike lanes. Didn't specify dedicated on State Street or dedicated on parallel streets. So that's a conversation to continue to have. Design workshop responses clearly preferred bikes to be located on parallel streets, but you see a lot of, if that's not possible, we could put them on straight in this way or that way. So that's something for us to flush out as we'll talk about the next steps. Again, more conversation. Transit, strong preference for fixed transit running parallel to State Street in the survey. In the design workshops, more responses preferred small, slow shuttles on State Street. So that's something, a trade-off, a discussion to have as we get into the alternatives analysis. In that vein, you can see here multimodal access. We did ask in the survey, how would you like to move on and around State Street in the future? And you can see there's some pretty strong trends in here. Walking, pedestrian only, very strong. Dedicated paths for bikes and scooter had a strong feedback. Again, closed to cars, 79%, and transit, 81% parallel. So there are some clear trends in there, but a little bit of things that still need to be discussed and some trade-offs, which is smooth transition to the next step. So as Tess said, our next step is to start looking at framework and design concept alternatives. That is going to be a conversation in a lot of cases about the trade-off between if we want to, for example, have bikes in a separated, protected space along State Street, but we also want the maximum amount of space for flexibility and programming and activation. There's a trade-off there because we have limited space, right? So the tool for that is going to be the alternatives, where you'll see different options in the community, and everybody will be able to evaluate how does that work. Is that our priority? What we're going to be looking for in that step is the priorities when people see those options on the table. And so, as I said, the next steps, we've got the SSAC meeting in February. That we'll be bringing some preliminary alternatives to that meeting to sort of workshop and discuss with them, evolve those, and bring them to the next community outreach round of community meetings in, as Tess said, April to possibly May. And then there'll be a second community survey about those alternatives to, as I said, get to what are the aspects we like, what are our priorities, so we can coalesce those and move it to a preferred option.
So that concludes our presentation. Just, we're here as an update, so receiving a progress report for the State Street Master Plan. No action at this time, but hoping to get your questions and comments, and we're here to help answer them.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to council for questions. Start with Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's really hard to hold back comments. That was a great presentation. I'm going to struggle because my numbers on my slides that I had are a little different than yours. So the hard question, I have two big questions, but two harder ones for you to look for. There's two community visioning survey slides with, if you look this way, they have these bar graphs on them. And so the first one is what brings you to State Street? And eating and drinking is at the top with 89%. Does that ring a bell?
Yep.
So, and then the next one after that is community vision, and that one has safe experience, bring people downtown. It ends with facilitate housing. So I'm just wondering, that's
the first one.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the first one, and then your next one I think was the next one. Maybe not on mine it was. So on those two slides, I'm wondering what do you think, based on your experience, is a surprise on there based on not just pre-COVID, but say 10 years ago? Like, for example, on the second slide where it says facilitate housing downtown, I don't imagine 10 years ago that would have been 41% of the respondents. Maybe on the first slide, 27% of people 10 years ago wouldn't have been thinking about biking downtown. So I'm just wondering what's your big takeaways on those, on the paradigm shift of downtown compared to 10 years ago?
That's a great question. I would say on the first one here, eating and there's actually, to be honest, not a lot of surprises. And also, we did 2 years of study, and surveys in Denver on the same question, and eating and drinking, people love to, patio life. You can see it all around the world. So what people want to do and do. It's really, I look at those top 5, and it's a classic of great cities and great spaces. People want to be around other people and see them doing things. The fact that there's less emphasis on, I want to exercise and work out on the street, not that surprising. On the other question, in terms of how downtowns have changed, it's a great question. I was surprised to see design for locals, frankly, isn't higher. Okay. Just because you often ask people what they want their downtown to be. They want it to be a genuine, authentic expression of this place, right? And so I want to see more local retail and more that. So often when we do this kind of question, you get an answer that says, yes, it needs to be, I've been in communities in Colorado and other places where we said we want to bar chains completely, right? That was a bit of a surprise, but I think it's still 56%, so still well balanced. Honestly, I'm not surprised by most of these. You're right. They speak to people want to be in a place that's social where they see other people. We heard this morning, there's a hierarchy that we often talk about in urban design and planning about what brings people to public space, almost like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Starts with safe. If I don't feel safe, feel like I'm not going to get hit by a car or going to be, a victim of a crime, I won't be there, right? That's the first one, not a surprise. Second one is comfortable. If I'm not comfortable there, if it's too hot, too windy, or too loud, I can't hear my friends, I won't go, right? So safe and then comfortable, and then you get into, sort of delight and joy and the things that make a place really special, right? So all of those, I think, are consistent with that.
Great, thank you. And then I'm not sure, I just have two other questions that it'll either be for you, Matt, or one of staff. And these are both things I hear recurringly out there as we slog through this process. And one of them just has to be on let's just say a combination of the outreach results, the number of survey responses, the in-person numbers. What do you feel about those? How do they compare to other processes that have gone in other cities? Are we seeing fantastic responses in terms of numbers and participants? Are they not so fantastic? What do our results look like in that regard?
Councilmember Jordan and council members, I'm going to start and then I'll have Matt follow up with some of the examples from other communities that MIG's seen. So quite honestly, the numbers are great and they far surpassed, I think, our expectations internally, and really it's what we were hoping for. Is and that's the reason why we did advertisement and why we went out to different events, is we really wanted to make sure that community members from all over saw the survey, were able to take it, were aware of different events that we had, the design workshop, the open house. And so that number of almost 6,000 people that have interacted with the survey is a really high number. And I think we should all be proud of that. And then in terms of our website engagement, we've had around that same number also engaged with the State Street Master Plan website. And so I wanted to emphasize that as well. I think that's another really great thing. And then in terms of community events, so in attachment B, you have some of the events. There's 45 of them that were highlighted as outreach events that we did with the community between August and December. And then there were additional about 45 or so, maybe a little more than that, meetings with various stakeholders, property owners, business owners, members of the public, and then community organizations that both staff and MIG participated in and had with different people in the community. And so I think that also shows just the level of engagement for this community. To me, that's part of the most exciting aspect of this project, is people in this community care about our downtown and care about the State Street Master Plan. And we are going to have hard discussions ahead of us. We're going to have debates and trade-offs that we're going to need to make, but that's good planning. I mean, that is what we want to see in our community. We want to have that healthy debate so that we can get to the best possible solution for our downtown. So I'll have Matt just talk a little bit about some of the examples that they've seen elsewhere and how this compares as well.
Yeah, Councilmember, I would second what Tess said. I think the engagement, the amount of engagement we've received from the community it's astounding. I will compare it to the mall, which I've worked on, 16th Street Mall in Denver, city of 3 million people for 7 years. We've had half of the amount of engagement that you've already had in this. And it's not for lack of trying, right? I mean, all of the same things. I'd like to say it's our genius in setting it up, but a lot of that credit, I need to say, goes to the staff. The amount of legwork that's gone in to make all the events that Tess described at schools and everything there and advertising it, it's been remarkable. So I think it's a huge success in my mind. I would say it's also a tribute to exactly what Tess said. People care about this community. I've had the privilege of working in places like this or Aspen, or Boulder. People really care, right? They come out, and that's a good sign.
Thank you. And then to either one of you or both, to the other concern mainly, well, I might have said this once or twice too, is just the long time of the process. And, and the master plan committee is only meeting every other month, and I'm going, we should be meeting every other week. And so maybe if you could just talk a little bit about how we are doing on that mess of a thing, and are there opportunities to accelerate it? Are we moving at the speed that is conducive to the best product, and just how all that feels from your perspective?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Jordan and council members. So I want to emphasize that we are still right on track from when we came to you with the contract with MIG. And actually before, when the State Street Master Plan was initiated, we had a target of the end of 2023, early 2024. We still expect to hit that and bring forward a master plan at that time frame with a final concept design and an implementation plan included. Frankly, I think to do it right, we continue to need community engagement throughout the process, and to go any faster than how we are going now would mean that we would need to limit that more. It also means that there's a lot of technical analysis and details behind the scenes in order to get a concept forward. And that work takes time. It just does. We need to understand what we have on the ground today, and we also need to understand the constraints. So I don't really see us being able to go any faster. I think that this is pretty fast for a downtown master plan. And I mean, we're really close up into the design concept stage. And at that point, I think it really will feel like we're moving even faster. So April will be when we release those concepts to the public. The State Street Advisory Committee will start to have some initial discussions about trade-offs in their February meeting. And then after April, we'll take that feedback back. We'll take that feedback from the community and then come up with a final concept design in August, which will be, again, released to the public for their comment and feedback. And that will be sort of a loop. We'll make changes to that and then come to City Council with a final design, hopefully for approval.
Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. Well, first, thanks for all the work that has gone into this. It's that outreach is kind of astounding when you consider the size of what we're engaged in versus Denver. But a few questions, and the first few are related. For the comp cities, are those open or closed mall areas? And first that, and then I have the two kind of follow-ups to that. And specifically, I was looking at that were in the PowerPoint were Greenville, Pearl Street, and Boulder, and then San Luis.
So, Councilman, those three examples, one is closed. Boulder is closed for 4 blocks, and now they're starting to see an extension of that in a more shared. They're having the same discussion about how to possibly extend it. The other two are not closed. They're more like main streets with an emphasis on pedestrians, on pedestrian space and sidewalks and restaurants and all those activities, but they are not closed to cars.
Okay, that's helpful to understand the options that are out there and the length that they are. And then in those three, so in Boulder, the population's about a little over 100,000. Greenville, it's about a little over 70,000. In San Luis, it's just under 50,000 or so. Has there been any discussion in terms of technical analysis? I don't know how to term this, I guess, is carrying capacity in terms of the size of the town, including when you have tourists come in. You can only do so much programming because you can only have so many people down there. And so with Santa Barbara, we have downtown, we have a smaller population. We're not Denver like you mentioned, but we also have the Funk Zone and the Harbor, which are points of interest. So how are we balancing the population that we have, the carrying capacity to make downtown work with all the different potential design elements?
Councilmember Friedman and council members, that is really the question that we're working on right now. So when there's a lot of analysis from our economic subconsultant to figure out how much our city can truly sustain in terms of our downtown businesses, retail, restaurants, and office use and housing. I think when we think about downtown, another way to think about it is to think about it as a neighborhood. And how does that, what kind of things do you want to see in your neighborhood, or what are the day-to-day activities and things that you need? Truthfully, we can have it a variety of ways. So right now we have about a 10-block closure, about a mile in length. There are a lot of communities of similar size to us that are smaller than that have a full pedestrian closure that are closer to about 0.3 to 0.5 miles in length. There are examples of communities that have 10-block closures or closures with a mile or a little bit over a mile in length too, so it is possible. I think we need to just think about it kind of creatively as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be all or nothing. There could be a design concept out there where you have a segment that is a pedestrianized space, and maybe you have a segment that has new infrastructure and other changes to it that maybe isn't a full closure. Truthfully, I'm not sure. We don't have the design concepts at this time. We're working on them right now, and so that's what we're really trying to work on and figure out to then present out to the community in April.
That's helpful because it shows that that there's a lot of different options out there, and we're looking at everything in terms of the carrying capacity and what's achievable. And the follow-up question on this part, and then I have a couple more. The reason that I bring that up is when one of the slides showed that 79% supported a closure, and I don't know if that meant the full 10 blocks or the whole thing or just a closure. And then, so where would we be if, say, that holds that it's 79%, say, supported the full 10 block closure, but then this analysis, the economic analysis, the capacity analysis that you talked about shows that, hey, that might not work. So how would that be addressed in the three upcoming preliminary designs and then ultimately what comes to council?
Councilmember Friedman and council members, it's really a balance. So I think that if the community is telling us they want something with that overwhelming amount of response, that is something that we should really take into consideration and recognize. But at the same time, I mean, part of the reason why we're doing the technical analysis is to see if we can truly make it work. And there are many, back in the 70s, 80s, a lot of places closed downtown areas, and a number of them didn't succeed. There are some that did. We really are. The purpose of doing this master plan is to make sure that this is successful. And so we are doing this background research and analysis from an economic standpoint and otherwise to really understand if we can actually handle it. And if we can't, then that's a conversation we're going to need to have to help people understand what can and maybe is not as feasible for this community.
And Councilman, I'll add to that too. I think Tess is exactly right. But when we start to get into those alternatives, we see the response in survey says 79% says keep it closed. It doesn't specify. People didn't have the ability to say all 10 blocks or make it 4 or this. When we got the design workshop responses, the overwhelming number of them had all of it. The full length closed. If that's a challenge, and that can be a challenge, like Tess said, there's a lot of research from pedestrian closures from the 70s and 80s that talked about what's successful and what wasn't, and a lot of them shorter was more successful, but that doesn't have to mean we go down to 4. I think what it means, there's a lot of ways to deal with this. What it can mean is how do we differentiate one set of blocks from the other set of blocks so that we make it interesting for people to move back and forth? How do we make sure the district as a whole is woven together? The big challenge of 12 blocks or 10 blocks of closures, if I'm on one end and I want to get to the other, it's a half a mile walk. That might prohibit to me. So how do we make sure that people can walk up a block, take something parallel, or there is something, drawing them to make that change? So there's a lot of things that we can do in the context of perhaps pedestrianizing all 10 blocks, but, perhaps pedestrianizing short of it. Those are the trade-offs that we want to go through in the analysis, and we'll be vetting that with the economics consultants and everyone else to make sure, absolutely, that what we do meets the carrying capacity in the market of Santa Barbara.
Thank you. This discussion right here is very important for me when I look at it, because what comes back, because we do want to be responsive to what the public is looked at and what they feel. And at the same time, we also have to look at the data to see what it can actually support and find that. And I don't have the answer right now. That's why we're going through this and having all this technical analysis and all this feedback.
And if I could add one other thing, Councilmember. One other principle that we've talked about in presentations I think is key to this as the design evolves is flexibility and adaptability. So one thing we should think about as the design gets more detailed, is this solution adaptable? So 10 years down the road, we find out, oh, maybe we want to think about this slightly different. You're not into a whole another rebuild. It's an easy adaptation to another use.
Perfect. Couple more questions. It hasn't come up, but I know it's a large issue. At least here, I think it has come up in some of the design workshops. But the issue of restrooms. We want to bring a lot of people downtown, and we don't have enough restrooms. How is that being incorporated, and are there different types of restrooms that we can use, and how are we going to address that critical need, because we don't want to necessarily put it on the shoulders of all the businesses?
Councilmember Friedman and council members, I think restrooms is one of those critical pieces of infrastructure that we need to consider. If we're wanting to attract more people downtown, we really need to recognize that means a variety of infrastructure. It means probably more lighting. It means more restrooms. It means changes likely to utilities, looking at stormwater infrastructure. It means potentially more areas for people to take a break. Maybe you have more seating spaces. There are a lot of considerations there, but restrooms is one of the top ones when we're thinking about different designs, or certainly in the design concept ideas that are starting to be floated.
And just two more questions. When it comes to State Street itself and and what we're trying to achieve for the downtown, because it's really downtown plan, we have these two parallel projects to this. We have the Library Plaza coming online. That's a new public open space, and De La Guerra Plaza open space. How are those in particular, because they're community gathering centers, being part of this conversation, and how is the changes that are going to take place to both of those informing the discussion of what is possible versus a few years ago what wasn't possible, especially with Library Plaza coming online this year?
Councilmember Friedman and council members, we're certainly looking at both De La Guerra Plaza and the Library Plaza, and I've been communicating with the project managers for both of those with the city to really understand the different projects. I think we need to recognize that there are other things happening downtown, and so whatever we do in the master plan needs to speak to the things that are already in motion, and also needs to connect to them. I think those two are really big ones, but there's also the State Street undercrossing, and there's the farmers market relocation. There are a number of things happening right on or right around State Street that will influence this project, and so that's continuing to be discussed.
Perfect. And my last question is the implementation. So we go through this timeline, we adopt the plan, say a year from now or so. What's next? How are we addressing a plan for implementation? So just in general.
Councilmember Friedman and council members, so part of the master plan, you can think of it as in two parts. There's the design concept, the part everybody's probably excited to see is what will it look like? And then there's the implementation plan, meaning what are our strategies going to be for funding the project, for phasing a project like this? What kind of considerations do we need to recognize in terms of operations and maintenance? Also, and generally staffing. How is the space going to be managed? And so that will be part of what we're calling the implementation plan that will get approved at the end of 2023, early 2024. Once we hopefully get approval at that point in time, we'll need to start thinking about and start acting on how we are getting that funding, how we are going to be phasing the project, and then working on construction documents and working through likely a phased approach.
So the design plan that we're going through right now, that will, once we finalize it or get very close, then we will start the implementation plan of how it's going to be from immediate things we can do, low-hanging fruit, to the medium and long-term. So that will inform this, and so we're going to start to do that implementation plan as we're moving this forward, so we don't stop and then start over again. It's kind of continuous.
Councilmember Friedman and council members, yes, that's certainly the hope, is that we keep this moving. There's momentum happening. I think once we get an approved concept design and an approved plan, it means that we can really start to get into construction and really start to think through the phasing side of it.
Thank you.
Ms. Sneddon, and we'll try to do this and then get to our speakers before we break for our translator break.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Just have a couple of questions, or a few fewer than Councilmember Friedman, but still a few more. So you mentioned multiple parking lots being underutilized, and I'm thinking also in addition, it's constantly a conversation about the Nordstrom building, the Macy's building, and densifying urban living downtown. How would that impact or affect the analysis for the future use? I mean, if we're looking at just current use, if we're anticipating or hoping for more housing downtown, how does that impact your analysis?
Councilmember Sneddon and council members, and I'll have Matt jump in here in a moment too. I think it greatly influences it, and part of the vision for this master plan that was set forward by the State Street Advisory Committee and then your council, one of those bullets included facilitating housing and thinking about housing. If we want to have a downtown with more housing, we need to think about open space for those residents, right? We need to think about where are they going to congregate, and perhaps they won't, perhaps they're not going to have individual private spaces, private open spaces, but instead have this downtown public space for people to enjoy and congregate in.
Thank you. So are we thinking of it more, or is the visioning more of like a park as opposed to creating a mall? That's sort of how I think of it, and I'm just confirmation.
Councilmember Sneddon and council members, I think it's a really good way to think about it. I mean, the way that I'm thinking about it right now is a community space. So that can mean different things to different people, but how are you going to enjoy the space or the experience without necessarily going from point A to B or going down to a restaurant or a shop? How are you going to just enjoy that location?
Without necessarily making a purchase to enjoy the space. Okay. And then just by the surveys, would you say that it's a successful use of the space now and we're just trying to make it more successful? What is our starting line?
Councilmember Sneddon and council members, I think we did an experiment in May of 2020, and it gave us the ability, we decided to close a street, and it allowed us to see what the use of outdoor space could become. And there was an overwhelmingly positive reaction to that in our community. I think we're seeing that through the survey as well, as you see no cars on State Street, people wanting to be outdoors. I think throughout downtowns in the U.S., that perspective has also shifted. People want to experience outdoor environments and want to experience their downtowns differently and how people interact. And so I do think that it's influenced it. I think that we also really need to think about this as a future forward plan and not let the present or the past change what the future could be.
Thank you. And then in our briefing, you mentioned something about the difference, if you're comparing to Pearl Street or 16th Street, difference in our weather and climate compared to the other comparable cities. If you could just reiterate that, I thought it was really...
Sure, Councilmember Sneddon. Really, we're set up for success in many ways for what a new revitalized downtown could look like. I mean, we have one of the main things and one of the things that attracts a lot of people to Santa Barbara in general is that we have great weather. We have great natural resources. We have this ability to sit outside pretty much 12 months out of the year. That just isn't the case for places like Burlington, Vermont, or Boulder, Colorado, or 16th Street Mall in Denver, Colorado, and others as well. And so I think we're set up for success in that way, and I think that's a really positive thing.
Thank you.
Councilman, can I add to that? We talked briefly a minute ago about, the research that talked about the challenges of length and some of the criteria that successful pedestrian spaces and pedestrian malls have had. You have a lot of those, so it's not all a challenge of length. Interestingly, are towns with a university in it, towns with a good tourist base, right, and the weather. So a lot of the successful malls built in the 70s have those characteristics. So you have a lot of those fundamentals in Santa Barbara. So I think this can be successful. So I want to say the length, it wasn't all, there are challenges about length in that research. It also pointed out some of the things that Santa Barbara has going for it to make this a success.
That some of those others don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And then when you talked about Boulder having chain stores that match the brand of the community, how is this accomplished? How do we have control or influence over which stores come in? If it's not a mall, if it's just open-ended.
Council members, That's a great question. There's a lot of ways to approach that. Some places will create and this has been a discussion in Denver too, a retail sort of through the business improvement district, an overall coordination of the retail so you can curate it in the sense like a shopping mall does, right? And district and do all those things that you can do when you're thinking about it at that scale. That's a big challenge of cooperation between a lot of owners. So that is not, you don't see that a lot, right?
And that wouldn't necessarily be part of the master planning, but it's sort of a consideration.
It might be, to speaking to the implementation plan and the economic, there might be some, some research into different strategies to accomplish that kind of thing, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then for trees, for the input, is it for more trees than we already have on State Street? Additional trees, is that what the surveys show?
Councilmember Sneddon and council members, so the survey asked a question around what types of green infrastructure would you like to see downtown and on State Street? That question is worded such that, and there are existing wonderful street trees downtown, so we have great trees already. But I think what the survey data is showing is that our community really values that part of our landscape, and that it's not something that we really want to mess with, that we want to celebrate the trees that already exist and really think through how street trees can better the overall design.
Great, I'm a big supporter of more trees, the trees we have. I'm going to show my support there. And then you talked about outreach compared to other cities you've worked with, but how does this outreach compare with other projects we've done within the city? It seems to me like an extraordinary amount of outreach. So how does it compare with other projects?
Councilmember Sneddon, I'll start off, and then I might pass this one over to Timmy as well. So I think it's a great success. I mean, really, we have tried to go out day and night, weekday and weekend, to really get at different groups of people. It's certainly not the same type of outreach that I've seen in other planning projects, either here or elsewhere in my career. This is something different, and I think it will only continue, and that's the hope, is that we will continue to be out in the community and trying to really get to where people are, rather than having people come to City Hall or come to a city-sponsored event downtown, but to go to where people congregate. And then I'll pass it off to Mr. Bolton to talk a little bit further.
Honorable Mayor and Councilmember Sneddon. So I've worked in long-range planning for about 10 years before I switched to this project, and I think we've done more outreach for this than any of the other efforts I've been involved with, and a lot of creative things we've done, like the example with the design workshops. We're partnering with the Arts Fund, providing childcare, all of these things that are, exciting and things I'm super fortunate to be involved with as part of this project. And one of the things I think is the most exciting, just because, as Ms. Harris has mentioned, the community is cared, and we're actually providing that platform to get that input to make this the plan the best that it can be.
Thank you. And do you feel you've reached people who don't go downtown or go to State Street? Are you getting input broader from your survey results? Do you feel that that's been successful?
Councilmember Sneddon and council members, yes, I do think that is the case. I think certainly, just like anything, it can be improved upon, and so we're going to continue to work through the process to make sure that we reach people that we still haven't reached, or that aren't as aware of the project, and try to really get at it.
Thank you. And then I saved the worst question for last. What can we do right now about the bike situation? My concern is that there's growing agitation about it and feelings of unsafety, and I'm worried that if we don't address it now, it's going to kill the enthusiasm for this project moving forward.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Sneddon, I just want to caution that we're not talking about the interim operations plan. This is merely the master planning effort going forward. So I want to caution that that right now is not on the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then I can withdraw the difficult question, but it does need to be answered. Thank you.
All right, very good. I'd like to move now, if we may, to public speakers, because there's a few that are interested in this item. Is there other questions? No? Good. Thank you. Okay, we'll start out with Dave Davis. You get to check out our new fancy electronic counter there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council. I want to start by thanking staff, our consultants, the council members, and the public for the level of excitement and engagement. Right? You asked questions as to like how's this compared to previous things. I've been involved for over 45 years. This is in the top 1% of community engagement. Absolutely off the scale, beyond my personal expectations for where we are today. So congratulations to everybody so far, but we still have a ways to go. I want to give you a couple highlights for me as to what we've gone through. One for me, and it's a little minor thing, and Tess put up a slide there as responses coming from some of the school kids, right? When I first saw those were the most exciting things that I've seen in this involvement. These are young voices. They are glimpses of the wisdom of the future of Santa Barbara. So it's incredible. I really compliment Tess for reaching out the way she did. But when you sift through those, you see wisdom, right, beyond their ages. It's really impressive. The second thing was the Planning Commission HLC joint meeting, right? That particular meeting had a robust discussion, a healthy debate. Cass Ensberg, Devin Wardlow, it was really healthy. I'm looking forward to more of that. But they had a question for me, and that was, what's the hardest issues going forward as chair of the committee? And I said, it's going to be seeing us get stuck in the issues of the day, as we've heard today, and even questions which have come from the dais, in trying to recapture basically the past. If I came and told you that we were going to reduce traffic capacity by 80%, we were going to acquire hundreds of the businesses along State Street, portions of their property, that we are going to do millions of dollars of construction, and in fact, we're going to create a new city bureaucracy, you'd tell me I was crazy. Well, that was the vision for the parking district, right? So when you're looking at long-term visioning, you've got to get beyond today and start thinking about what can we do in the next 20, 30, and 40 years. Lastly, let me say that you will hear this from me over and over. My friend Hal Conklin had visions for downtown, right? And as we move forward in the next phase where we're looking at urban design concepts, his three things that he thought we needed to embody in that vision: a sense of place, a sense of history, and a sense of celebration. If what we come out of which has the alternatives which embody those elements that Hal fought so hard to incorporate into the vision for downtown, we will have succeeded. And out of the public comments, I have three more. I'd like to see flat, flexible, and fun. Flat meaning basically curbless, flexible. There are so many things that are going to change over the future. We need to be able to be totally flexible. And if it's fun, it will succeed. Thank you all.
Okay, Justin Gunn.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you very much, and good afternoon. My name is Justin Gunn. I'm a homeowner here in downtown Santa Barbara. I'm also a filmmaker and an artist, and I proudly serve on the boards of TV Santa Barbara and the Santa Barbara Summer Solstice Parade and Festival. And I'm also an organizer of the monthly light-up, art-focused bike ride called Night Cycles. I'm here today because I had the great privilege of participating in the recent Create State workshops. And I want to give special thanks to the city, Create State, and the Friends of State Street organization for providing the platform for the public to be able to engage in this process of envisioning the future of State Street. As an avid cyclist who utilizes State Street Promenade on a daily basis to access both retail shopping and dining, I most appreciate being able to engage in the simple pleasure of just cruising on my bike down the promenade, where I can see and be seen by friends and neighbors, stopping and chatting and connecting along the way. Now, cruising on State Street is a time-honored tradition here in Santa Barbara, albeit one that used to involve motor vehicles. I believe that this same functionality can be reimagined for the modern era in a way that embraces the myriad modes of non-motor vehicle transportation increasingly being enjoyed by both residents and visitors alike, all while keeping pedestrians safely separated. One of the concepts that came out of the Create State workshop in which I participated was the idea of a slow-speed, meandering pathway with a constantly curving design that would prevent anything more than a slow cruising speed. Such a pathway could be wide enough to accommodate the needs of emergency vehicles while also providing enough room in both directions to allow for the safe coexistence of everything from parents with strollers and kids on big wheels, walkers and joggers, wheelchairs and mobility scooters, roller skaters and rollerbladers, bicyclists, tricyclists, and personal electric vehicles like one-wheels, and yes, e-bikes. This pathway, what I've taken to calling a cruiseway, would be interrupted every half block to allow for pedestrian crossing, further slowing the speed of those traveling along it. At each crossing, bike racks and B-cycle stalls would allow for easy access to businesses along the route, and public pedicabs could also be envisioned in a model like this, perhaps styled to resemble classic horse carriages from Santa Barbara's history. I believe that fresh ideas like this will help to set the State Street Master Plan apart from anything that's come before in other cities and further establish Santa Barbara as a forward-thinking city that embraces new, environmentally friendly, and healthier forms of transportation in a way that honors the social tradition of cruising down State Street. As such, a multimodal State Street cruiseway would serve as a fun destination experience in its own right. You can imagine people saying, "Come to Santa Barbara and ride along the cruiseway." I bring this idea to your attention today with the hope that it be tested as a candidate solution for the safe coexistence of pedestrians and all other forms of personal mobility as part of the development of the State Street Master Plan. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Robin Elander is the next speaker.
You gotta love this enthusiasm about this project. As Executive Director of Downtown Santa Barbara and a member of the State Street Advisory Committee, I've participated in many of the workshops. Each was very well attended by a diverse cross-section of the community. There were deep and passionate discussions and exciting deliberations at each table. I want to publicly invite the community to continue to participate as the master planning process unfolds and at the State Street Advisory Committee meetings. As you can see here, that the feedback and input from our community is a really important part of building the future we want to collectively see downtown. I also want to applaud you all here at the city and the city team as well as the MIG team and the entire community for their thoughtful work to date. And I also look forward to working with these teams as well as the community to build an innovative, sustainable, well-designed space that serves our lofty collective community goals and vision. We certainly have our work cut out for us, and I'm excited to see how we all can rise to the challenge and build our collective future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Michael Schomburg.
I'd like to withdraw my speaker's request. The answers are, I'm understanding what's going on.
Thank you, Ms. Schomburg. Steve Leiter.
Mr. Mayor and council people, I'm Steve Leiter. I've been at commercial retail leasing for 37 years. My area of expertise is Carpinteria to Paso Robles. I've been involved in everything ground-up developments in those communities, and I cut my teeth in 1987 here on State Street. When Dave Davis brought Paseo Nuevo to fruition. Retail is not dead. 78% of retail is still bricks and mortar. 22% of it is internet, of which Amazon controls about half. There have been a number of stores that have evolved through COVID that have opened temporary locations and now turned to permanent locations on State Street since then. My concern and what I heard today is what's going to bring people back to town from a retailer standpoint. In the 90s, the phone was ringing off the hook. They wanted to be part of Nordstrom's, Macy's, whatever. They wanted to be on State Street. That's not the case. We have 252 storefronts from Gutierrez to Sola, just on State Street. 52 of them by last count, are vacant, okay? I'd like you, in your next phase, to address that, because when I pick up the phone and call a retailer that's hot and bothered going into communities like ours, no interest in going to Santa Barbara. And it's not because of the homeless and other things. They've contracted, or they don't find it as inviting, okay? And people, and you talk to some of your constituents, whether it's my wife or her friends, people are going, where do you buy your clothes? Okay, and that's been a real problem. The other thing which was pointed out is the mid-block, which is Paseo Nuevo, is kind of dead. How do we recharge that? I have shown the 2 empty boxes to substantial retailers and a downsized vision, no interest, okay? So my point is, we need to look at those things as going forward in the next phase of this master plan, okay? And just understand the elevation on State Street changes a foot every 50 feet. So walking up State Street is a lot harder than walking down State Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there online speakers?
Yes, there are, Mr. Mayor. Let me pull them up. We have 3 hands raised of persons who have logged in on the Zoom meeting, and those are Sharon Rich, Marilyn Loperfido, and Jim Knell. Sharon Rich, please go ahead. Sharon Rich, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sharon Rich, and I'm the president of the newly formed nonprofit Friends of State Street. We were born from the 2020 charrette as volunteers who live and/or work here in downtown Santa Barbara and believe in building a local nonprofit that supports the Create State Master Plan process. Our mission is to support the businesses, organizations, and surrounding neighborhoods of State Street during this planning process through community engagement and activities, and also following the design process to help fund the soft and hard costs to help realize it. You may have already heard of us as one of our first community engagement initiatives for Friends of State Street has been supporting the Santa Barbara businesses to meet the city's requirements for outdoor dining. Our first phase was to pilot a parklet project, vetting all the sources that parklets could and outdoor dining could look at in terms of meeting the requirements. And this Saturday is the second part of that outdoor dining project from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. in 4 hours, starting at the 500 block of State Street. 4 teams of volunteers in the community will be donating their time to paint over 10 outdoor dining structures in the colors approved by the city. We have many sponsors that are paying for these items to do this with, and I invite everyone to join us in this for community by community event, and we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Marilyn Loperfido. Marilyn Loperfido, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Marilyn Loperfido. I am a 44-year member of the Santa Barbara Arts and Crafts Show. I've served on the elected advisory committee for multiple terms, and I currently serve as an elected alternate. We are 145 small businesses who've been seriously and negatively affected by both the pandemic and the fallout from the pandemic. I've participated in both the surveys as well as the in-person planning charrettes. I brought up the needs of our show, but I don't see them listed here. How have we been affected by the pandemic, you might wonder? State Street is the only downtown artery to your show, and with the closure of State Street, it has now been the most recent development project that will be the final nail on our coffin. State Street intersects with the beginning of our show and was the only way that both visitors and locals alike accessed our show, especially as pedestrians or bicyclists. We support the needs of our bars and restaurants. However, we are easy to overlook because we do not have a strong lobby behind us. In addition, we have been omitted from the Things to Do section on the city website, as well as the harbor and beachfront section. In addition, we have lost the electric buses that used to service our area. They've been long gone. And somehow we need a presence on State Street to be your partners in this project. I'm wondering if anybody recalls the night market in the vacant Macy's that I participate in. Citizens may be under the impression that we are constantly busy, but in fact, we've suffered the same detrimental effects that retail on State Street has undergone. In addition, the majority of our business now only comes from accidental tourists who do not come to buy. We have seen close to a 75% decrease in pedestrian and business traffic as a result of all of these developments. And most of us, if not all, make a living from this show. Please do not interpret my comments as being opposed to reinvigorating our downtown. Please look at us as partners instead. Please do not let the speed of completion of this project be the final death knell of yours and our show, because we know that the community also cares about our longevity. I appreciate all the comments today. I did take some notes. Thought it was interesting.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank the school in Burlington, Vermont. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I had the microphone.
Okay, our last speaker is Jim Cannell. Jim Cannell, please go ahead.
I just want to take a few minutes to rehash what direction that you're taking at this point with the consultants. I met with the consultants and expressed my concerns. They seem to have forgotten some of the things I've mentioned to them. One of them is that retail, from the standpoint of State Street, is declining, not because of the retail market, but because of the condition of State Street. State Street was a major artery from downtown to the beach. It was a major artery for pedestrians, it's a major artery for tourists, and a major artery for traffic. We've lost that, and along with that, we've lost the culture. And when I sat with you folks from MGI or whatever the consultants were, I said you need to look at the revisioning of State Street from the standpoint of utilizing the sidewalks and not State Street. State Street can work with sidewalk dining, with sidewalk pedestrian use, and open State Street with cars or shuttle buses, maybe not cars, but shuttle buses. Those can work. Those you completely disregarded in your analysis. You also disregarded the analysis. What I told you is that it's with State Street being closed, even with the pedestrian mall, we don't have the parking lots in the back of these buildings that were created by the parking district that allow for big trucks to make deliveries. In the past, they were delivered on State Street early in the morning or late in the evening. And that circulation and being able to move merchandise in and out of a store is lost with the pedestrian mall. This is very new. I think you're missing the point. I think you've got a long way to go. You need to rethink the sidewalk mall and stop the cars going up and down State Street and look at alternate forms of transportation to moving people up and down the street. It's going to be a heck of a lot less expensive and a lot more easily and efficiently completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further speakers, Madam Clerk?
No further speakers.
Okay, very good. So we can come back to council comments. I want to say a couple of things, though. Number one, we are way still in the early stages of this process. We got a long ways to go. So nothing we're going to do here is wrap up because this is an informational item. And we also have some folks here that are waiting to interview, and I've got to get the translators a break here pretty quick. So I'm going to ask if you have comments, if they can be succinct and brief. We had a lot of chatting during the question period, so anyone? Okay, well I knew somebody was spoiling the game. Ms. Harmon.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I didn't ask any questions, so I just have to. I will be very brief. I did, as our colleagues did, want to just share how excited I am about how the process has gone with regard to community engagement. I wanted to share with everyone that I went to one of the design workshops, and it was a Saturday morning at 9 a.m. There was a really important World Cup game on, and it was raining. So I thought there is no world in which anyone is going to show up. And by the time we started with the facilitation, every table was full. And to the point that's been made over and over again, so I won't belabor it, that is not only reflective of the work that you all have put in to get the community engaged, but just how excited people continue to be about State Street. And we've all said it a million times, and it remains true. It's one of the few things that community members have been able to maintain focus on and continued engagement on. And to me, that just shows that we're absolutely on the right track with regard to how we are moving forward with this master planning process. It was a long time coming. I know Councilmember Snedden did a lot of work to get us here. And wow, is it bearing fruit with regard to the level of engagement. And I believe it will bear fruit with the outcomes that we all get. I also wanted to say there's been a lot of back and forth that I myself have been involved in and with regard to the interim operations. And one of the things that I'm really excited about in terms of the phase that we're at, we can finally have those debates and those conversations in the place where they belong, at this master planning process. So we can really take, I think, which is sort of the subtext of these conversations we're having when we do the interim decisions, and have them out in the open in the master planning process and really fully litigate them as they deserve to be litigated for our community members. So I'm excited about that. I know it's going to be hard. There are hard decisions to be made. But I think we're all feeling that it's time to really dig in and have those difficult but necessary, really imperative conversations to move the community forward. And I will close by saying thank you to Chair Davis. We are so lucky to have you leading this committee, and the way that you articulated what this process is about, getting beyond today to build something flat, flexible, and fun, there's no way to say it better. So I wholeheartedly second everything you said, and want to share my deep appreciation for your leadership in this process as well.
Ms. Gutierrez.
I just want to give thanks to the staff. I'm really, really impressed with the community outreach. I've sat on the seat for already over 3 years, and there hasn't been a staff report until now that I can test that you guys actually went to the community and you got the feedback. The community members in my district, at least I know that you went to one of the elementary there, even the staff was really impressed that the city came to the school. Some of the parents called me, they were a little hesitant, like, well, why is the city here? Can we answer these surveys? And I said, of course. But they felt a sense of like they were actually seen. Because when I spoke to them, they said, well, the city makes decisions, but it's always for the tourists and the people with businesses. And it felt nice that they want to know that we're also interested in going downtown. So I just really want to thank you. I'm really impressed. I can tell when city staff will give presentations and they say community outreach. But I know that you guys went because I did also see you at Foodland. So I have friends and family that live on the west side, and I'm just really impressed. Thank you so much for all your hard work, and for the committee members as well.
Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I just hesitate to have this framed at the end as a informational item. It's far from just information being handed out today. It's truly, just to go to the other spectrum, it's more of a transformational validation. I'm so impressed with the amount of information, the responses that you've gotten, and both the credibility and the validation that there is somewhere we're going that means something. Dave Davis talked about the 3 points that we've sort of looked at the Master Planning Committee. He added on Hal Conklin's. You guys actually had me at 8 to 80. I pretty much act one of those ages, but I'm closer to the other, so I'm a customer either way. And the moments of joy. I mean, what a great just a great vision to have to seek out and look for the power that comes in those moments of joy built into your downtown landscape and function. And I can't thank you guys enough for where you've gotten us so far and where I think we're going with this.
Ms. Sneddon.
Just be very simple, just keep it up, and way to go. This is very impressive, and thank you.
All right, very good. Quick question for staff. Can some of those slides, some of those graphics of State Street, we went through them really quickly and they're not big enough on this thing. Is it possible to get some blow-up prints of those for just my own purpose? My colleagues might like them as well.
Mayor Rouse, yes, and they'll also be on the State Street Master Plan website after this meeting as well.
Okay, yeah, I just like to piece of paper. Okay, very good. At this point in time, we are going to take a short break. Thank you. This is not an action item. We're going to come back for the interviews when we're done with that. We'll be back at 10 after. Give the translators their break. Thank you very much. Reconvene. Madam Clerk, would you read the next item?
Item 17, interviews for city advisory groups.
All righty, very good. So thank you for your patience and waiting. We're going to bring you up, and we would like you to keep your comments in the 3 to 5 minute range, if at all possible. We may ask questions of you afterwards, but just so we can roll on, get everybody through the process here. We'll begin with the Historic Landmarks Commission, and that would be our candidate, Mr. McClure.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, so sorry. I will put up the 3-minute timer, but if
Put
we
a
wish to go
3-minute
3 to
timer,
5.
it'll give you at least some perspective. I'm not going to
Okay.
hammer you on it, but if you could, please.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me this afternoon. My name's Charles McClure, and I'm a landscape architect and a candidate for the HLC. So just a little bit about myself. I came to Santa Barbara in 1983 for UCSB, and I followed my brother there. And then I went on up to Cal Poly in San Luis and did the landscape architectural program there. After I graduated, I did 2 jobs, one in Palm Springs for a little while, and then in Westlake Village. Working for landscape architects, you need to do an internship before you can become licensed, so I did that. And then in 1988, came to Santa Barbara to work for Bob Cunningham and David Black, and spent a couple of years there, and then went out on my own in 1990. So I've worked in Santa Barbara City and county as a landscape architect since 1990. And I've worked in most all parts of the city and county. I've presented to all the design review boards, including HLC, so I understand the process. The most important point I wanted to make was I understand that the HLC guidelines and that projects need to be passed through, that document in order to be approved. So I have the document, I've read it several times, and I understand that's the criteria, which makes it more objective and less subjective. So I'm asking for this appointment. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Any questions from Mr. McClure? Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Mr. McClure. Anything in EPV in the last several years that you've worked on that I'd recognize?
No, I haven't been before that board in quite some time.
Anything anywhere?
Yeah, a lot of ABR and a lot of single family.
Okay. Okay. So more single family.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Thanks.
Ms. Sneddon.
I think that's the same as my question about if you anticipate having many conflicts.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Further questions from anyone? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
We'll move on to the Housing Authority Commission. And if you would kindly state your name, and we'll move from there.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and council members. My name is Lisa Carlos, and I have applied to serve on the Housing Authority Commission. After moving away to attend college, it wasn't just the unrivaled beauty of this place that drew me back. It was the people and our values. Santa Barbarans have always understood the importance of looking out for one another. This point was made especially clear during the storm last week and the Thomas Fire and slides 5 years ago. Mother Nature, our affordable housing infrastructure, and our resilience as a city are inextricably tied together. Many of our first responders, teachers, medical personnel, and grocery clerks were stranded by highway closures. Building more affordable housing is not just a humane and equitable thing to do, it is increasingly critical to our city's safety, quality of life, and sustainability. That's why I'm ready to join forces with the city and the Housing Authority in the challenging work that lies ahead to secure a permanent funding source for affordable housing, not just at the local level, but from our state as well. With a master's in public administration from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and over 20 years working as a policy analyst and research director, I know how to disentangle and sometimes make sense of complex layers of federal, state, and local rules and regulations. This professional training has informed my full-time work, volunteer work. While living in the Bay Area, I witnessed the meteoric rise of the high-tech industry, the subsequent housing to jobs imbalance, and then the overnight transformation of cities. Sadly, blocks of naturally affordable housing were replaced by expensive high-rise apartments, forcing families to relocate an hour away from their jobs. To remedy this tragedy, I met with city staff and poured over ordinances, general plans, EIRs, nexus studies, and RENA numbers. But it was too late. Lucrative land use and building height policies were set in stone with no attention given to affordable housing. This is a mistake I don't want Santa Barbara to repeat. So as a board member of the Riviera Association, I've helped to organize panels, conduct surveys, and write newsletters on the need for affordable housing. For the League of Women Voters, I've reviewed staff reports, compiled data, and testified on housing policy. As a private citizen, I've read and commented on all 250 pages of the Housing Element Update. If appointed to the Housing Authority Commission, I could double down on my current board work with the Habitat for Humanity to preserve and build new low-income affordable housing. I would encourage more innovative public-private partnerships on city parking lots, such as the Carrillo-Castillo project, and adding density to the Housing Authority's existing properties, such as at Presidio Springs. It would be a great honor to support the Housing Authority as they evolve to create more affordable housing so that our elderly, our most vulnerable families, and most important, the people who work here, can call Santa Barbara their home. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Carlos? Thank you very much. Anyone else for the Housing Authority? Planning Commission.
Hey everyone. My name is Sarah Wilder and I'm applying for the Planning Commission. I recently got my real estate license and I am practicing real estate in the city of Santa Barbara. I feel compelled to be a part of the decisions that surround the building and implementation of residential units in our city. As a young person in the city, I fundamentally understand the struggles of being a renter and dealing with the lack of residential housing at various times. So for me, having sat in on some planning commission meetings recently, I felt that there was a lack of responsibility for commercial projects to offset any detriment they may have to residential unit supply. That brought me to where I am now, which is wanting to be a decision maker on that commission. On top of being a real estate agent, I am also an event business owner in the city of Santa Barbara. Oscar here has actually been to one of our events recently, so I understand the importance of planning and taking the time to make the proper decisions. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Wilder? Oh, Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you for applying. I have a question. How long have you lived in Santa Barbara?
3 years.
What brought you here?
Originally school, and then can't really complain about staying around. So,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you very much. All right, anybody else for Planning Commission?
I'm back. I don't give up. I'm Donald DeLuccio. First of all, I think you made a really good decision on Lucille Boss when you appointed her to the Planning Commission. I applied back then too, but she actually was a really good candidate and a good choice. But I think I'm also a good choice to be on the Planning Commission. I've served on the West Hollywood Planning Commission for 20 years. But to back up a little, I have been watching the meetings recently, and I know they elected a new chair about a week ago. And what really inspired me was that she spoke about respect. And I know respect is a core value for the city, and personally, it's a core value for myself. So that meant a lot watching some of the meetings and seeing the folks on the commission and the way they respect each other and respect community members. So I want to be the same way if I get appointed, to show you that that's very important, and that's what I would do also. And I thought the short-term appointment is a good one for me because it's only 10 months until the end of the year, and that would give you an opportunity to see what I can do. Just to back up, I actually moved up here in 2018 full-time. I'm from West Hollywood, obviously. I lived there for about 30 years. For 5 years, I was actually involved in my homeowners association. It wasn't homeowners, it was a residents association. West Hollywood is made up of 85% renters and about 15% single-family homes. So I actually lived in the single-family home neighborhood, and actually I was the president of my residents association. From that, I did become a planning commissioner. I was appointed to the planning commission, not because I'm an architect, not because I'm an attorney, but because I was a resident of my community, and I wanted to give back to the community. People actually, when they heard I got appointed, they said, well, what does he really know about planning? So what I actually did was, as we get the planning packets, not only would I read the packets actually cite different sections of the zoning ordinance or the general plan. So I would actually read those sections in detail. That's how I became up to speed on what was going on. If you try to read a zoning ordinance or a general plan, I mean, that's going to probably put you to sleep. But if you read it in context to the business before the planning commission, it makes perfect sense. And that's how you do get, I believe, you do get up to speed. Currently, I'm a homeowner here. I live across from the golf course in Woodridge. It's a condominium, 28 units. I'm the president of my homeowners association. I like to keep involved. I do have a really stressful job in the daytime. I work in advertising. I've done that forever, but I've always been able to manage being a planning commissioner and working in advertising, which I did in Los Angeles. And I actually did it up here on a part-time basis, and that's how I evolved to come up here full-time and be a resident of Santa Barbara. I guess my issue, like everybody else's issue, is affordable housing. And so I'd like to deal with those issues, protecting, of course, existing affordable housing. I know the Housing Authority does that. But also, I know we have to meet a RHNA number of 8,000 units. I think that'd be nice to meet 8,000 units, but I think it would be nicer that we focus on the low, the very low, and the moderate units. We need to do a better job at that. And I think we also need to spread the housing across the city. I know Melpis has a really nice project, just recently passed design review, I think 701 on Melpis Street. And that will have 16, I believe, moderate units in there, so that's a good start. And then we have, obviously, La Cumbre. That's going to be a couple of possible developments there. And, of course, it would be nice if we could do a Sunset Pacific plan, be West Hollywood, if we could do a specific plan for La Cumbre. If that's not the case, we are going to have to deal with one or two different developers there, and so I'd like to be involved in that as well. And so those are really, I think housing is the key thing right now, because we also want to protect the quality of life for our residents, obviously, and because that's why we all live here, we like living here. But I guess, again, we do need to provide housing, but we also need to provide it in a way that our each neighborhood's unique, and that we have compatibility when we are deciding on the housing, So those are just some of my thoughts.
Okay, very good. Any questions for this applicant? Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else for Planning Commission? Was there anybody here for an interview that was not called up? Okey doke. And I believe then that's enough for that item, and we will move to Councilmember Committee Assignment Reports. Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So since the last time I gave a report, it was back in December. So a lot's happened, a lot of holiday events that were held by a lot of organizations, which I really appreciate. Recently, I attended the Arts Committee meeting, and they went over the re-grand opening of the Contemporary Art Museum at Paseo Nuevo. So that was exciting that they were able to bring that back and serve the community. The other thing I kind of wanted to comment on was to pay my respects to everybody that was either injured or killed in the recent shooting in Monterey Park. Is that correct? Yeah. So, yeah, my respect and condolences to everybody involved in that. Thank you.
Very good. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I participated just recently in the annual rose pruning event at the Historical Rose Garden, and also attended a dig out on at the Flamingo Mobile Home Park with the Bucket Brigade, digging out mud. They've been working all around the city, and I believe on the west side also Councilmember Gutierrez participated. Also attended a Kachuma Operation and Maintenance Board meeting. Very exciting meeting, talking about the potential spill of Kachuma, possibly over the weekend, harrowing retelling of the story of how quickly that lake level rose, 2 to 4 feet per hour while they were trying to submerge the pipeline that I've been reporting here for a while. They did get the pipeline submerged just in time. So that was done, but there was a lot of loss of some of the endangered trout in the, not to do with comb operations, but in just the storm. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Friedman.
Thank you. I attended the Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. It was a great event, as always, just really inspirational, and there was a lot of members from the community there. And unfortunately, they had to cancel the programming early on because of the weather, but they were able to still do the program at the Arlington. But I just want to appreciate all the effort that goes into that and all the community members who showed up. Also attended the monthly League of Cities Coastal Cities Leadership Group meeting, and I also attended, as a subset of that, the Coastal Commission Local Government Working Group meeting. And then also, as the alternate this month, attended the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments and Air Pollution Control District. And the good news out of the SBCAG is that the airport local land use plan was adopted this year, as all the airports were, so land use compatibility plan. So that was approved, and a big deal. And then also attended Beacon as well, and was appointed to continue serving on the executive committee. And the new chair will be Ventura County Supervisor Vianney Lopez, and then the Santa Barbara, from Santa Barbara County would be Goleta City Council member Kyle Richards will be the vice chair. So have new leadership going in there, and it's going to be a big year for Beacon. Thank you.
All right, and City Administrator Bjork and I attended the mayors and city managers event in Sacramento. We went to the Belly of the Beast, and very educational, very informative, and I would encourage my colleagues to go do the League of Cities training up there when you have the opportunity. And then lastly, I would like to close in memory and respect for the folks in Monterey Park as well as the folks in Half Moon Bay. Very sad, very tragic, and could happen anywhere. So, and that's it. We stand adjourned.